Hey guys, tonight we're going back in time, way back, to the kind of winter that makes modern cold snaps look like spa days. This is the medieval winter. No puffer coats, no hot chocolate, no electric anything. Just you, some threadbare wool, and the creeping suspicion that your toes might not make it to spring. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're watching from tonight, and what time it is. Drop it in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up in pitch black with only your breath to keep you company. Literally, because your breath is fogging up the inside of the blanket you're curled under, the only warmish cocoon between you and the stone-hard chill of the air. The roof leaks, the walls don't insulate, there's frost on the inside of the wooden door, and under the thin straw mattress you sleep on, the floor is harder than the bread you'll eat later. Your room, if you can call this corner of a shared cottage a room, is so cold you're honestly wondering if dying in your sleep would have been the warmer option. Your fingers are stiff, your nose is burning, nemes, and your feet. You haven't felt them since sundown. That's not a figure of speech. You might need someone to check that they're still attached. You shift slightly, and hear the crunch of frost on fabric. Yeah, your blanket froze overnight. The single embers left in the hearth barely gave off enough heat to keep a bowl of soup lukewarm, let alone warm your tiny hay-padded bedroll. The fire died before midnight, and this woodpile's empty. Again. And because it's winter, there's no foraging, no dry kindling, just wet branches and ice. Your neighbours aren't doing any better. You can hear groans from across the one-room space. Your father hacking up something that sounds suspiciously like a dying goat. Your mother muttering a morning prayer through chattering teeth, and your younger siblings whining softly, curled together for warmth like pups. You'd feel bad, but you can't move your arm enough to throw another blanket on them, not that there are any left. The sun hasn't risen yet, and you kind of hope it doesn't. Why? Because sunlight means responsibility, means chores, means having to leave this barely livable corner and step into the world outside. And outside is worse, but you do get up, slowly. Every joint complains, every breath stings. Your toes find the cold dirt floor, and you feel your own heel bones touch down like they're walking on swords. You shuffle across the room to check the hearth. Just ashes, grey and cold, like everything else this time of year. You think of the firewood pile, the one that's maybe a splinter away from being entirely gone. You burned the last of the dry wood a week ago. Now it's just damp logs that hiss and sulk in the fire instead of burning. You even tried burning some thatch from the roof, but that just smoked up the whole house and earned you a thump on the head from your grandmother, who insists that smoke summons the death angels. She might not be wrong. You tug on your woolen tunic, thick but not warm, and scratchy enough to exfoliate several layers of skin. Then come the leggings, coarse, damp, smelling vaguely of sheep and regret. And finally your boots, cracked leather stuffed with straw, not fur straw, because fur is for nobles. You're not a noble, you're a peasant, which is a nice medieval word for person who works all day and dies early. Still you step outside. The door creaked open with a crackle of ice, and instantly your nostrils flare with the slap of frigid air. Your breath comes out like smoke. You feel it crystallize in your eyelashes. The ground crunches beneath your boots. Snow packed hard over frozen mud. And the sun? It's not up yet. It's just a pale glow on the horizon, like the sky's trying to remember what warmth looks like. You glance across the village. Smoke rises lazily from a few chimneys, those who managed to find something flammable last night. You're not one of them. The whole place looks like a sketch of itself, all charcoal outlines and grey mist. A dog barks in the distance, then goes silent. Either it found something edible, or it froze mid-snarl. There's a moment standing in the bitter dark where you seriously contemplate whether you could sneak into the woods and just sleep there forever. But you know better. The woods are worse. Not just because of the wolves, though those are real, and yes, they're hungry. It's because even the trees feel angry in the winter, like they're judging you for trying to light them on fire. You head to the tiny shed you call a wood store, and stare at the sad pile. It's more snow than wood. Each log you touch is soggy, frozen, and heavier than a full sack of grain. You bring one inside anyway, it's that or freeze. You toss it on the embers and sit back. It hisses like an angry cat, gives off a puff of steam, then just sits there. unburned, mocking you. People talk about the quiet beauty of winter, but that's usually from the perspective of someone holding a cup of cocoa near a fireplace, not a guy trying to warm his hands on a log that smells like swamp mould. But here's your quirky detail for the day. In some parts of medieval Europe, it was common to bring livestock indoors during the winter. Yes, right into the living quarters, just for the extra body heat. Smelly? Absolutely. Effective? Debatable, but cuddling a goat might keep you alive. And there's a deeper ongoing debate historians still argue about. Just how cold were these winters really? We know that the medieval period included what's known as the Little Ice Age, a centuries-long cold snap. But no one's quite sure how much it varied by region, and whether it was the winters themselves or the crop failures they caused that did the most damage. Either way, you're feeling the damage firsthand, and it's only morning. You stare into the hearth for a while, hoping that by sheer force of will the soggy log will catch fire. It doesn't. It just sizzles. Your stomach growls, a long, hollow ache that's been with you for days. It's not that you're starving exactly yet, but you're running on less than fumes. And what's worse is knowing there's nothing fresh coming, not until spring if you live that long. You stagger to the rough-hewn table in the corner and pick at the cloth covering your food stores. This morning's menu is simple, a chunk of blackened rye bread, crusty enough to cut your gums, and that's the good part. The rest of the loaf is starting to mould around the edges, those fuzzy green bits you pretend not to see. You scrape it off with your fingernail and tell yourself mould is just extra texture. Maybe it's medicinal. That's what the old woman across the village claims. She says, mould shows God's hand touching the bread. Sure, maybe with a slap. There's a thin broth left over from last night. Mostly water, a few floating cabbage leaves and the ghost of a turnip. Cold, congealed and flavoured with despair. You slurp it anyway, because you need something in your belly before you venture out into the morning's work. Outside, the frost is thick on every surface. Even the livestock are sluggish. The chickens haven't laid in days, and your only pig is shivering so hard it looks like it's dancing. But food and heat are at war in your life, and you only get to choose one. You can use the last of your dried grain to make something resembling porridge, or you can barter it for firewood and stave off hypothermia a few hours longer. Either way, you lose, and choosing wrong might kill you by week's end. You've already burned the stool by the hearth. The ladder to the loft, gone. The back half of the family bench, that's tonight's fire. You wrap yourself again in your cloak, a word that suggests drama and mystery when really it's a wet wool rectangle with a hole cut out for your head, and head out with a wooden bucket. The well is a short walk away, but short is a cruel joke when the cold claws at your face like it's trying to peel your skin off. Every inhale burns. Every step feels like it might be the one where your leg just says, nope, I'm done, and buckles into the snow. The well is iced over, of course. You hammer at it with a stone until a crack appears, then use a stick to pry it open. The water is bitterly cold, but at least it's water. You fill your bucket, spill a third of it on your boots, and try not to scream as the ice instantly soaks into your socks. On the way back, your mind wanders to the rumours, the ones people whisper when they think the church can't hear, about the people in the next village over. They say someone there ate their dog last winter, and then a neighbour. Is it true? Who knows? But you're starting to understand how it could be. When you're this hungry, you don't think straight. You look at living things differently. Even your shadow looks edible. Your father is already outside, hacking weakly at a frozen tree stump with a dull axe. It's less chopping wood, and more attacking the concept of warmth out of spite. You offer to take over. He gives you a tired nod and shuffles off. You know he's proud of you, at least in the way medieval fathers show pride, which is mostly not shouting at you while handing you tools. You swing the axe, again and again. It bounces, splinters, does nothing. You're sweating and freezing at the same time, which is a medieval party trick called dying slowly. Eventually a small chunk chips off. It's not enough, not nearly, but it's something. And at least the movement keeps your blood pumping. Here's a historical gem to think about while you swing. In some areas during this period, peasants resorted to mixing sawdust or ground up tree bark into their bread dough to stretch it further. You'd laugh if it didn't make so much sense right now. You honestly consider doing it. Bark isn't nutritious, but it fills space, and space filling is starting to sound better than nourishment. Now, here's the cruel twist. In theory, this could be the time of year when you're least physically busy. No ploughing, no harvesting. But instead, You're working harder than ever just to stay alive. Because nothing works the way it should. Fires refuse to start. Tools break, livestock die. Everything slows down, but your panic speeds up. And there's a broader scholarly debate that people in your future will argue about. Some researchers believe the worst winters of the medieval period weren't just bad, they were catastrophic. They think early records understate just how lethal these months were, especially in lower class households. No diaries from poor families exist. No royal scribe documented the freezing death of a peasant girl in a cottage 3 miles from the manor. So the real scale of winter suffering is a gaping blank. You go back inside and your mother is mixing something in a cracked clay bowl. You can't identify it and you know better than to ask. She offers you a wooden spoonful. You take it. It's warmish, tastes like boiled lint and dirt. But you nod, say thank you, and eat another bite. Because gratitude is the only seasoning you have. The baby is crying again, probably from the cold, probably from hunger. There's no milk, no wet nurse. Your mother wraps him tighter in cloth that smells faintly of sour milk and sweat, and rocks him without rhythm, humming a lullaby that sounds more like a warning. You sit down next to the hearth and watch the smoke rise. The wet log finally caught fire, or at least is thinking about it. Your legs ache. Your fingers are swollen and purple. Your breath still clouds the room, but now it's mingled with smoke. You close your eyes just for a second, and there it is again, that little thought that creeps in around this time of year. What if you didn't wake up tomorrow? Not in a sad way, just practical. One less mouth to feed, one less shivering body taking up blanket space. But then the baby squeals and your mother hums louder and the fire hisses, and you sigh and open your eyes again. Because winter hasn't beaten you yet. You're back outside before sunrise has even fully shown itself, squinting into a dull grey sky that offers no comfort and even less light. There's no colour out here, just shades of ash and bone. Your breath comes in clouds, and even the trees look miserable, like they're tired of existing in this season. You tighten the ropes that pass for laces on your boots, still damp from yesterday's ice, and start your walk toward the commons. It's ploughing day, sort of. It's more pretend to plough day, because the soil is frozen solid and your wooden plough might as well be a spoon. Your hands grip the old leather reins as you coax the oxen forward. These beasts are massive, lumbering and not in a rush, probably because they're half frozen too. Their breath steams from their nostrils, and frost clings to the coarse hairs around their eyes. They eye you like they're considering mutiny, but reluctantly they move. Each step into the frozen soil is a groan, a crunch, a complaint. You and the oxen form a pitiful parade down the strip of land you've been assigned. You try to dig the plough into the earth, but it skips like a stone on ice. It screeches, the wood straining with each tug. You press harder, using your full body weight, and still the blade barely bites. After half an hour, you've made maybe a dozen feet of shallow, mostly useless grooves. Your shoulders are already burning, and your fingers? You stopped feeling them 20 minutes ago. This isn't farming. It's punishment. It's performance. Like waving a knife at a mountain and calling it quarrying. But you keep going because the manor expects it. Even in winter, especially in winter, the Lord wants to see activity, wants to believe his land is working for him while he eats roast meat and warms his feet by the fire. So you plough, or act like it. Nearby you spot one of the other peasants, a man named Aldrich. He's older, stronger, and somehow more miserable than you are. His ox is refusing to move altogether. Aldrich kicks at it, curses in a slurry of French Latin, and whatever angry grunts pass for medieval expletives. It's almost funny. Almost. But your stomach is too hollow for humour. The field is mostly silent, save for groans and the occasional crack of frozen earth yielding reluctantly to ancient tools. This might be a good time for a little-known historical tidbit. Medieval peasants sometimes added pig or cow manure to their frozen fields in hopes the steam would soften the topsoil. That's right. They were literally trying to warm the ground with poop. It didn't work well, but it made them feel like they were doing something. You wonder if you should try it. You pause to rest. Your back aches in that permanent way now. It doesn't matter how you move, bending, standing, walking, it always hurts. The cold makes your muscles feel tight and ancient. You look down at your hands. They're raw, weird, cracked. The skin is splitting near your thumbs. You suck in air and it tastes like metal. Then you hear it, the distant toll of a bell. Not for mass, not for prayer. It's the manor's call to market. Today's the once-a-month village trade, and while that sounds festive, it's more like organised desperation. People come with whatever scraps they've managed to preserve or scavenge, and they try to trade up. Smoked fish for dried apples, boiled leather for pickled beets. No one's happy, everyone's cold. You hitch the oxen and head toward the central square, hoping your small bundle of dried roots and limp leeks might get you something. Anything new. Maybe a hunk of salted pork. Maybe a few cloves of garlic. Maybe a potato that doesn't look like a shrunken head. The market square is pitiful. A few dozen villagers mill about with baskets and sacks and wide empty eyes. There's no shouting, no laughter, no music, just the scrape of boots in snow and quiet murmurs of bartering. A woman holds up a jar of something murky and red. She says it's fermented cranberry stew, but it smells like regret and vinegar. You move on. Someone offers you a fish, it's frozen solid, its eyes like marbles, and it smells like the back end of something dead. You decline. You're hungry, not suicidal. Eventually, you manage to trade your roots for a small wedge of cheese. Hard, pungent, and likely older than you. But it's protein, and you feel a flicker of victory. You tuck it carefully into your satchel, like it's treasure. You pass by the manor gates on the way back. You don't look directly through them, you know better, but you catch a whiff of meat on the air. Rich, greasy, seasoned. Probably roasted lamb, maybe venison. The Lord eats well, especially in winter. That's the joke, really. When the village is starving, the manor is feasting. It's like the seasons invert inside those stone walls. You try not to hate him. It's dangerous to feel too strongly about people who can hang you for insolence. But it's hard. Your fingers are bleeding, your lips are cracking, and the only meat you've tasted in weeks is that cheese, which may or may not count as meat depending on how alive it smells. That's the cruel reality of winter in your world. Everything's a transaction. Warmth costs food, food costs labour, labour costs health, and health is a luxury few peasants keep through January. Interestingly, modern scholars still argue about whether peasants truly accepted this system, or secretly rebelled in smaller, quieter ways. There are signs, missing livestock, faked sickness, accidental tool damage, that hint at little resistances. People weren't just helpless, they adapted. Bent rules, looked the other way when someone stole a turnip. It wasn't justice, but it was survival. Back home, you divide the cheese into thin slivers, one for each family member, and chew yours slowly, letting the salt sting your gums. It's the most flavour you've had in days. Your mother pretends not to enjoy it, but you see her eyes flutter shut while she chews. The baby is asleep again, bundled in every scrap of cloth you own. Outside, the sun is already dipping. Your day is over, your body is wrecked. Your belly is still mostly empty, but for one blessed, smelly, rock-hard moment, you had cheese. That counts for something. You wake in the dark again, but this time it's darker than usual. The kind of dark that feels heavy, like the whole sky collapsed while you slept. You blink and listen. No birds, no wind, just the slow rhythm of dripping water from somewhere in the rafters. That means the snow on the roof is melting. Briefly. Bad sign. It means the air has warmed just enough to turn snow into slush, which inevitably turns your world into a soaking, freezing sponge. You sit up and instantly regret it. Your neck feels like it was twisted in the night by an angry blacksmith, and your back might as well be a medieval architectural structure. Permanently bowed, rigid and full of splinters. You don't need a mirror to know what you look like. Pale, chapped and glazed with the layer of winter sweat. Every pore of your body is fighting to survive. You're not dying exactly, but you're not doing anything else either. There's no fire left. The log you worked so hard to chop yesterday burned out sometime during the night, leaving just a nest of ash and smoke-smeared rocks. You reach for your boots, stiff and damp, and slide them on with the kind of grace usually reserved for shoving frozen sausages into hollowed-out rocks. You give one good yank on the laces and wince as the leather snaps in your hand. Doesn't matter. You weren't going to walk comfortably anyway. Outside, the ground is a mess. Ice sits in thick patches over mud, and where the sun pokes through, it's created a landscape of slop. Your first step lands in a puddle hidden under snow, and your toes are immediately soaked. Your second step is more cautious, but not enough. You slip, flail, and somehow catch yourself on the corner of a frost-covered fence post. You mutter a prayer, or a curse. Honestly, at this point it's the same thing. Breakfast today is a quiet horror show. Bread that's more rock than grain, paired with a smear of something your mother insists is preserved fat. From what animal? You don't ask. You're just thankful it's not moving. You chew slowly, wincing as you feel the edges scrape your mouth. Someone mentions going to check the livestock, and you realise that someone is probably you. So off you go, across the muck to the sagging structure that passes for a barn. You push the door open and are greeted by the thick, cloying stench of animal life at its most condensed. Sour hay, old droppings, and the sour funk of beasts who haven't moved much in weeks. The cow, your only one, gives a grunt and lifts her head. She looks miserable, and you're sure if she could speak, she'd demand passage to a warmer climate or simply death. You check her feed, then the goats. They are both low. You dump what's left of the hay into the troughs and whisper apologies. You can't afford to let them die, not just because you need their milk, but because you're emotionally way too attached at this point. These animals are basically roommates now, and frankly more pleasant than most of the humans you know. You wipe your hands on your tunic, which adds a new stripe of filth to your growing collection, and step outside just as the wind kicks up. It cuts through your clothing like tiny icy knives. No matter how many layers you wear, it is never enough. Wool helps, sure, but it's not miracle fabric. It's itchy, heavy, and turns to frozen armour the second it gets wet. You wrap your cloak tighter and start heading toward the forest's edge. It's gathering time, though what exactly you're gathering in this season is a mystery even to you. Every twig is frozen, every branch brittle, and the snow hides everything useful. Still, you poke around with a stick looking for kindling or bark that could be stripped. Maybe some mushrooms, the edible kind if you're lucky, the hallucinogenic kind if you're unlucky but bored. You find a few scraps, a pine cone here, a dead root there, and add them to your bundle. You pretend it's an accomplishment. Let's slide in a quirky historical fact while you shuffle through the snow. In parts of medieval Scandinavia, people made shoes out of birch bark during the winter. Lightweight, fairly waterproof, and terrible for anything longer than a walk to the outhouse. Still, you kind of wish you had a pair. Your boots aren't winning any awards. Back home, your family is prepping the midday meal. Prepping is generous. It's a pot of snow slowly melting over a small fire, with some dried peas and leftover bacon grease swirled in for flavour. You can smell it from the door. It's not awful, but it's not hopeful either. Still, everyone gathers around the pot like it's a royal banquet. You each get a ladleful, and for a few minutes, the room goes silent. Everyone eats, even the baby who gums his way through a crust of bread like it's candy. There's a heaviness in the air, and it's not just the food. It's the feeling that this season has no end, that maybe spring forgot about you. The calendar says you're halfway through winter, but the calendar lies. Winter doesn't care about dates. It just rolls on, steamrolling morale. The rest of the day is spent in survival chores. Darning socks with twine, scraping candle wax into reused moulds, patching holes in the wall with mud that's mostly frozen solid. You're always doing something, but nothing feels productive, just necessary. You catch yourself staring out the window at one point, just watching snow fall in lazy spirals. You wonder what it would be like to live in a world where winter was a vacation, where people skied for fun, drank warm spiced wine by choice, laughed in the snow. You shake your head. Madness. Now and then you hear dogs barking in the distance. Then silence. That's the worst sound of all. Not the bark, but the cut-off. Like something answered. Wolves are always a threat in winter. They come closer to villages when food gets scarce. People in your village have lost chickens, pigs, even children. It's not just stories. One man found half a sheep's carcass dragged into the woods. Another found boot prints next to paw prints, and no boot wearer. Historians still debate how often these wolf attacks really happened. Some say the stories were exaggerated, used to scare people into staying close to home. Others think we've underestimated how deadly wild animals were in pre-modern winters. Either way, you keep your ears open when you go outside after dark. As the sun sinks again, everything goes blue and silent. Dinner is whatever's left of the midday stew, watered down and stretched with oats. You eat slowly, watching the candle burn down. The wax pools at the base. Shadows stretch along the wall. Later you lie awake, wrapped in every bit of fabric you own, listening to the wind whistle through the boards. You hear creaks, moans, a far-off howl, or maybe it's just the wind. Either way, you don't sleep well. You're already dreading tomorrow. Morning doesn't arrive so much as seep into the room like a slow leak. A grey, colourless dawn that filters through the cracks in the wall, turning everything a dull shade of hopeless. You're already half awake when it comes, having spent the last few hours shivering under your damp blanket, nose poking out just far enough to ache from the cold. You think about staying under for just a little longer, but there's no such thing as luxury anymore. Not even 10 more minutes. Not when the animals need tending, the fire needs building, and the snow outside is piled high enough to block the door. You groan as you get up, every joint protesting. Your shoulders feel like they've been forged into one solid piece, and your knees pop loudly as you swing them over the edge of the straw mattress. Your boots, still wet, still half frozen, are waiting for you by the hearth, which has gone completely cold again. No embers, no glow, just a crater of ash and yesterday's regrets. You wedge your feet into the stiffer leather, grit your teeth, and begin the morning's ordeal. First task: open the door. Not as simple as it sounds. The snow has drifted up high during the night, packed tight against the outside. You press your shoulder into the wood, push hard, and manage to crack it open enough to shove a boot through. Cold air blasts into the house like it's been waiting all night for its chance. Your mother groans and pulls her shawl tighter. Your younger brother curses softly and curls deeper into his pile of rags. You brace yourself, step out, and sink halfway up your shin in fresh snow. Everything is white. The ground, the trees, the roofs of nearby cottages. It all looks like someone spilled flour across the entire world. The silence is eerie, muffled, like sound itself is frozen solid. You glance up at the sky. It's that dull, pewter tone that promises more snow, not less. Somewhere off in the distance, a rooster gives a strangled crow and then goes quiet again, probably regretting the whole idea of being alive. Today, the main task is clearing the paths between the cottage and the barn, and from the barn to the road. You pick up the wooden shovel, cracked at the handle, barely holding together, and start digging. It's slow work. The snow is wet, heavy, and stubborn. Each scoop is like lifting a small disobedient boulder. You clear a narrow trench and stamp it down with your boots, then head to the barn to check on the livestock. Inside, it's not much warmer, but at least it's dry. The cow greets you with a mournful moo, and the goat blinks at you like she's mentally filing complaints. You brush snow off your shoulders and get to work clearing out their bedding, replacing what little straw you have left. The feed is low again, and you portion it out carefully, whispering soft apologies to both animals as they nibble greedily. You remember stories of entire village herds freezing to death in their stalls. Livestock dropping one by one when the hay ran out or the temperature dropped too fast. It happened 2 winters ago to a family near the forest's edge. They woke up to silence and found all 3 of their cows stiff, their mouths frozen around empty troughs. The family tried to butcher them for meat, but the meat spoiled before they could cook it all. They ended up with nothing but bones. While the animals eat, you check the roof of the barn. The snow load is heavy, and if it builds up too much, the whole thing could cave in. You clamber up the side and begin knocking snow off with a pole. Each thump sends a cascade of white tumbling down, and your arms quickly go numb from the effort. You slip once, just enough to remind yourself that falling off a roof in winter isn't a bruise, it's a death sentence. But you stay up there until the roof is clear enough to hold another day's worth of snow. Your fingers are purple by the time you climb down. You shake them out, blow on them, tuck them under your arms, but the feeling doesn't come back right away. You remember what happened to that boy, Thomas, last year. He lost 2 fingers to frostbite after he got drunk and passed out in the snow. They blackened and fell off like dried mushrooms. You try to flex to your hands again, just to be sure. You drag yourself back toward the cottage, where your mother is stirring something in a pot over a new fire. You inhale, hopefully, turnips and barley maybe? Something to warm the belly. She ladles out a scoop for each person, and you slurp it down despite the fact that it burns your mouth. You don't even care. Warm food is the only pleasure left. It could taste like boiled shoelaces, and you'd still be grateful. Someone knocks at the door. It's your cousin Edric, red-nosed and wrapped in a cloak that looks like it was stolen from a scarecrow. He says they're organising a trip to the woods for more firewood, one of the deep cuts, where the trees haven't been picked clean yet. It's dangerous. The snow is thick, the path is icy, but there's no choice. If you don't help gather wood, your home might not make it through the next cold snap. You nod and tell him you'll join. On the way to the forest, you trudge behind Edric and 2 others, each of you hauling an empty sled. No horses today. They're too valuable to risk. The snow is thigh-high in places, and every few steps you have to stop and catch your breath. The forest looms ahead, dark and hellital, like something sketched in ink. The deeper you go, the quieter it gets. Even the wind hushes in here, and the snow seems to suck the sound right out of the world. You start hacking at the smaller branches first, anything that's already dead or leaning. You don't bother with perfect cuts, just get it off the tree and into a pile. Your breath comes fast now, fogging in bursts as you swing the axe again and again. Your arms shake. Your feet feel like blocks of ice, but the pile grows. That's all that matters. Just as you finish tying the last bundle to the sled, you hear something strange. A crunch that doesn't match your rhythm. Edric freezes. The others stop too. You all turn toward the sound. Just trees? A falling branch? Or something else? A deer? A wolf? You squint into the trees and see nothing, but the silence afterward feels deliberate. You hurry the final knots and start dragging the sled back home. Historians still debate how common wolf attacks were in this period, especially during harsh winters. Some say the records exaggerate the danger to build village solidarity, or fear. Others point to the frequency of missing persons reports and wolf carcasses found near homes and say, no, the wolves were absolutely real. Tonight you don't care which theory is correct, you care that you made it home. You unload the wood, stack it near the hearth, then collapse onto your blanket, still wearing your boots. You'll take them off eventually. Just not yet. You dream of sun. Not the weak dishwater sunlight of a medieval winter morning, but a warm golden blast of it. A sun that actually means something. The kind of sun that wakes you up already sweating, with birds singing, and bees buzzing, and maybe, just maybe, a pear falling from a tree into your outstretched hand. Of course, that's all a lie. A sun like that doesn't exist right now. Not in your life. Not in this frozen little corner of the world where winter shows up in late autumn and doesn't leave until the flowers have already died again. You jolt awake to the sound of your brother knocking over the woodpile in the corner. A cascade of sticks hits the dirt floor and rolls toward the fire, which has once again reduced itself to a sulking whisper of smoke. You sit up slowly. Every inch of your body aches like you spent the night fighting in a bar brawl with your own skeleton. You stretch, which is just code for remember all the ways you are now permanently broken, and pull your cloak around your shoulders. Today is market day. Again, which you might remember from the last time you went as the place where hope goes to limp around on frostbitten feet. But this time, you're not going to trade food or firewood, you're going to beg. Not loudly, not on your knees, you're not quite there yet, but you're bringing a basket of scraps, some ragged bits of cloth, a tiny iron pin, a cracked wooden comb, and hoping someone will see something useful in it. You're aiming for salt, maybe, or some dried herbs, something to make the turnip stew taste less like hot sadness. You bundle up, layers upon layers, wool over linen over wool. You're so padded you can barely move your arms, but at least that keeps the wind out. Sort of. Your boots, still damp from yesterday's forest trip, squelch ominously with every step. Outside the snow is higher than before, reaching your knees now. The wind hasn't stopped in days. It moves like a living thing through the trees, curling around houses, whispering curses into the cracks. The road to the market is little more than a beaten path between snowbanks. You walk with your head down, shoulders hunched, clutching your pathetic offering like it's treasure. The village looks more like a graveyard today. People moving in slow, jerky steps like zombies. Everyone's thinner than they were at Christmas. Everyone's eyes are deeper in their skulls. You don't speak. No one does. Words are too expensive. At the market, a few stalls have been cobbled together from broken tables and scraps of cloth. No one has much. A handful of root vegetables here. Some jars of preserved beets. One old woman is selling what she claims is lamb fat, but it smells suspiciously fishy. You wander, checking prices, calculating ardently what your junk basket might buy. A younger boy, maybe 12, points at the comb. "My sister needs one," he mumbles. You nod, hand it over. In return, he gives you a small sack with something inside. You peek, dried nettle leaves. Not much, but better than nothing. You keep trading, the cloth for a wedge of crumbly white cheese, the pin for 2 cloves of garlic so small they look like they've already given up. You hold on to one item, a small carved wooden figure. It used to be part of a toy your father made before his back went bad. You keep it more out of stubbornness than sentiment. Not because you think you'll use it, but because it's the last thing in the basket that feels like yours. There's a slight commotion near the centre of the square. A merchant from the next village has arrived, dragging a sled piled high with goods. Oats, apples, something wrapped in wax cloth that smells like smoked pork. He's surrounded quickly. You edge closer but hesitate. You can't afford any of this. Not unless you trade something bigger, like your cloak or your boots. You consider it. The boots are wet and cracking anyway. You could give them up, go barefoot for a while. But your toes are already tender. Already that weird mottled colour you don't like to think about. So you hold back. You watch instead as a larger man elbows his way through the crowd and throws down a full haunch of venison in exchange for 3 sacks of oats. You look down at your garlic and realise just how far you are from real food. The merchant eyes you, half out of boredom, half out of suspicion. You buying or staring? He asks. You don't answer. You turn away. Pride is thin ice in winter, and you're always 2 steps from falling through. You leave the market with your little trades and head back along the road, clutching the nettles and cheese as if they might vanish. The wind bites harder now. The snow is falling again, slow, silent, relentless. And here's your fun fringe fact for today. In medieval England, during especially brutal winters, people sometimes resorted to something called breadstone. Not a cool name. It's literally flour mixed with powdered stone, chalk, clay, or ground up bone, to stretch out the food supply. Imagine chewing through a loaf of mineral-rich despair. Now imagine that's the best meal you've had all week. When you get home, your sister is stirring a pot of something over the fire. It smells, okay, better than usual anyway. You hand her the nettles. She nods, sprinkles them in. Then you break off a piece of cheese and let it melt slowly on your tongue while the stew finishes cooking. For a second, just a moment, you don't feel cold. Not warm exactly, but less cold. Which is the closest you get to joy these days. The stew is watery and thin, but the garlic helps. So does the heat. You huddle around the fire with your family and pass the bowl back and forth. No one speaks, no one needs to. You're all just glad to be eating something that doesn't taste like tree bark. Later, when the fire burns low and everyone else is asleep, you sit alone by the embers. You pull the wooden figure from your cloak and turn it over in your hands. You think about giving it up at the next market, but you don't. You tuck it back into your pocket right next to the last piece of garlic and lean back against the wall, eyes drifting shut. Scholars still argue about whether medieval peasants ever had free time, especially in winter. Some say winter was a rare lull in the agricultural cycle. Others point out that survival work never stopped, just changed. You can't decide what today was. A break, a beating, both. Either way, you made it home with cheese and nettles. That's what counts. That and the fact that your boots are still on your feet. For now. The morning doesn't knock, it barges in. A gust of wind slams against the house so hard it rattles the shutters and sends a curtain of frost cascading from the beams. You're jerked awake by the noise and the sudden shift in temperature. Someone must have opened the door. You squint toward the dim grey light and spot your father standing there, bundled up and scowling into the wind like he's daring it to kill him faster. It's not even properly light yet, but he's already preparing for a trip up to the manor house. Now this is important. The lord of the manor, the man who technically owns every dirt clod you've ever touched, is expecting his taxes. Not coins, of course. You're too poor for that. He wants payment in goods, labour or food. Problem is, you don't really have any of those things. But he doesn't care. He doesn't even remember your name, most likely. He just knows the village owes him something, and he'll take it whether you can spare it or not. You throw on your clothes, all still damp and stiff from yesterday, and stomp toward the hearth. Someone already started a small fire, and it's crackling bravely against the bitter cold. Your mother hands you a small slice of bread smeared with the very last bit of lard. It's thin and greasy and the size of your palm, but it's breakfast. You eat it in 2 bites and wash it down with water that still tastes faintly of the bucket it came from. You and your father bundle a few small offerings into a cloth sack. 3 cracked eggs, a few shriveled onions, a wedge of cheese that's seen better months. He adds the wooden pin you didn't manage to trade at the market. You tie the sack shut and follow him into the wind. The manor house sits on a slight rise at the edge of the village, looming above everything like it's judging you. Built from heavy stone, it looks like it was designed by someone who never had to fetch their own firewood. As you trudge uphill, you feel the temperature drop even further. The wind whips your cloak sideways and cuts through your layers like a knife dipped in ice water. Your nose runs, your ears go numb, but you keep walking. By the time you reach the manor gates, your lips are blue and your hands don't quite work. A guard eyes you with mild disgust before jerking his head toward the side entrance. You're not worth the front door. Inside, the warmth hits you like a slap. It's hot in here. Actually hot. Your skin prickles with it. You smell roasted meat and beeswax candles. You want to fall to the floor and beg to stay, just to soak it in, but you don't. You just stand there clutching the sack, waiting. Eventually the steward appears. He doesn't look at you, just gestures for the sack. You hand it over and watch as he opens it, sniffs the onions and sneers. "That all?" he says, like you just spat in his soup. Your father mutters something about the snow, the hunger, the sickness in the animals. The steward doesn't respond, he just nods, writes something in a leather-bound ledger, and waves you off like flies. No payment in return, no thanks, just a dismissive flick of his fingers. As you turn to leave, you glance toward the main hall through an open doorway. Inside, the Lord himself is reclined on a cushioned bench, one foot resting on a fur-covered stool sipping from a goblet. A hunk of meat, boar maybe, rests on a silver plate beside him. His face is ruddy with wine and firelight. He's laughing at something a servant just said. You feel your stomach twist. Back outside, the wind is waiting for you. It punches you in the chest the moment you step through the door, like it knows you got too warm in there. You walk back down the hill in silence. Your father doesn't say much. He doesn't need to. You've both just paid your winter tax in humiliation and empty stomachs. Here's your historical fact for the day. In medieval Europe, many lords did demand tribute from peasants during the harshest parts of winter, knowing full well the peasants could barely feed themselves. It wasn't about cruelty necessarily, it was about order. The system expected it. If one family didn't pay, the others might try to get away with it too. So even if you were down to your last egg, it was going in that sack. At home, your mother takes one look at the empty hands and nods, unsurprised. She already knew what would happen. Everyone does. You settle back into the corner, curl up near the fire, and stare at the small pot hanging over the flames. It's boiling water for porridge. No oats yet, those come later. Maybe. You spend the afternoon helping repair the roof. There's a new leak near the chimney, probably from an ice dam. You crawl up with your brother and start chipping at the frozen mess. It's tedious and terrifying. The roof creaks with every movement. The thatch breaks off in brittle chunks. The wind pushes you sideways, and the ladder sways with every shift in weight. If you fall, you're dead, simple as that. As you work, you hear shouting in the distance near the woods. A group of men is dragging something back toward the village. You squint, shielding your eyes from the snow glare. It's a deer, a massive one. Slung between two poles and steaming in the cold, you nearly fall off the roof trying to get a better look. They say it was snared, not hunted, a lucky trap set by a half-starved farmer who wasn't even trying for deer, just rabbits, but luck is luck. The village gathers around as the beast is hung up and quartered. The Lord will get his share, of course, a leg at least, but the rest? It might feed half the town for a few days, maybe longer if they stretch it. Salting, smoking, boiling bones for broth. You're given a small portion of flank meat, a tough, stringy piece with almost no fat. But it's meat, real meat, the first in weeks. That night your family dines like royalty, or at least like royal dogs. The stew is thick, rich with marrow and wild onion. You mop your bowl clean with bread so dry it crumbles like sand, and then lick your fingers. After dinner your father pulls out the little wooden figure you'd hidden in your cloak days ago, or he smiles, just barely, and says, "Remember when you carved this?" You nod. You remember. You were 7. It was supposed to be a knight. It looks more like a malformed turnip with legs. But everyone pretended it was heroic. There's a rare warmth in the room tonight. Not from the fire. Not from the food. But from something else. Survival, maybe. That brief, rare sense that you're not just enduring, but enduring together. Still, the wind hasn't stopped, and the snow is falling again. The wind howls all night, turning your dreams into a whirlwind of rattling shutters and cracking branches. You keep waking up with your blanket pulled tight around your face, heart racing, unsure whether the noises are inside the house or just inside your head. At one point, something thuds against the roof. A branch, you hope. Or maybe the sky itself falling apart. You don't dare go outside to check. The only thing worse than a medieval winter night is whatever might be waiting in it. By the time dawn finally wriggles through the cracks in the wall, you've gotten maybe 2 hours of actual sleep. Your eyes feel like they've been sanded. The fire is almost out again. Just a few orange coals hanging on like they know they're about to be replaced by another underwhelming, reluctant log. Your father is already awake, of course, trying to coax the embers into flames using dried straw and steady, frustrated breaths. The stew from last night sits in the corner in a cracked pot, congealed into a thick, lumpy paste. Still, it's better than nothing. You reheat it slowly and portion out the last few bites. It's not enough for everyone, so you and your older brother pretend you're not hungry while the others eat. That's the new family tradition. Self-denial served daily with a side of guilt. Later that morning, you step outside to check on the goat and find the door frozen shut. You press your weight against it, try to lift it off its warped hinges, and finally just kick it hard enough to rattle the walls. It swings open with a shriek, and a puff of powdered snow smacks you right in the face like winter's version of a slap. The sky is white again, heavy with snow, and the air stings like tiny knives on your cheeks. The goat, thankfully, is still alive, barely. She looks at you like she's re-evaluating her life choices. You brush the frost from her fur and offer her the last handful of hay, which she accepts with more grace than most people would. You check the cow next. She's huddled in the corner of the barn, looking like she's considering reincarnation as something warmer, like a candle. When you return to the house, your father suggests heading to the village alehouse. Not for drink, you don't have the coin for that, but for news, warmth, and maybe a few whispers about which families are faring worse than yours. It's a bleak game, but in times like this, someone else's suffering sometimes means your survival. And let's be honest, the alehouse has a fire, and you'd trade your best sock just to sit near it for 10 minutes. You trudge through the snow toward the thatched building at the edge of the village square. The door creaks as you open it, and a wall of warmth hits you. Real warmth. There's a fire in the hearth, the kind that's been going for days, and a few figures hunched close to it like moths to flame. You make your way over, nodding to the innkeeper, who nods back with the tired politeness of someone who knows you won't be buying anything. You settle on a bench near the flames. It's so hot it actually stings at first. Your face starts to thaw. You feel your fingers again. You don't even care that they ache as the blood comes back. The ache means they're still yours. Next to you, a man is talking about a family 2 villages over who lost their roof in the storm, caved in under the weight of the snow. No one died, but their food stores were ruined. They're staying with neighbours, 6 people in one bed. You can't decide if that sounds miserable or kind of cosy. Someone else grumbles about the church's tithe collector, who's been making his rounds like winter doesn't exist, still demanding gifts to God, even as children coughed themselves hoarse in freezing beds. There was quiet agreement, but no rebellion. Not out loud, anyway. One man spits into the fire and mutters, maybe if God came down here for a night, he'd change his appetite. You all laugh, not because it's funny, but because laughter's cheaper than bread. Here's a strange but true nugget for the day. In some medieval taverns, beer was served warm, not just because it tasted better in winter, but because it could help heat up your entire body from the inside out. The alehouse keeper sometimes left barrels by the fire just to bring them to life, as they said. Of course, warm ale tastes like old bread juice, but at least it didn't freeze in your cup. As the fire starts to lull you into a dangerous drowsiness, you hear a name whispered across the table. Someone you know. Maren. She lives near the woods. Her family's been out of food for days. She was seen walking the river alone yesterday. People are worried. That's how these stories start. A person disappears and everyone starts watching the tree line, waiting for their ghost to come back with frost on its lips. You don't know what to do with that. There's nothing you can offer her family, nothing extra to give. You think of your own mother, huddled by the fire, rationing dried peas and pretending not to shiver. Your stomach knots. You want to help, but in winter charity is a risk. You've seen people offer too much and pay for it later, when the snow gets deeper and their own cupboards go bare. You stay at the alehouse until your limbs feel human again. When the fire starts to lose its bite and your guilt outweighs your comfort, you rise, thank the innkeeper, and step back out into the cold. It's snowing harder now. The flakes swirl around you in a chaotic dance, driven by wind that wants to skin your face off. You tug your hood low and begin the slow walk home. You pass by the church on the way and pause under its overhang. The bell hasn't rung in days, probably frozen solid. You glance at the locked door and wonder what it's like inside. Warm, probably, dry, with bread and cheese tucked away for the monks. You shake off the thought. That door only opens to prayers or coin. You've got neither. Scholars today still argue over how much social support actually existed in small medieval villages during brutal winters. Some claim mutual aid was common, that neighbours helped each other in times of need. Others say desperation made people turn inward, hoarding what little they had. You suspect the truth lives somewhere in between. Sometimes people surprise you, Sometimes they disappoint you. Mostly you just try to make it through another day without freezing or starving. Back at home, your brother is breaking up a wooden stool to feed the fire. You nod. Good choice. That stool's been wobbly for months. Better in the hearth than under your butt. The smell of smoke fills the room, mingling with the scent of boiling water and something vaguely edible. Dinner is thin tonight. Just broth with a few oat grains floating in it like lost ships. But you eat it gratefully, warming your hands around the bowl. Your mother smiles faintly. Your sister laughs at something your father mumbles. It's not joy exactly, but it's close enough to pass for it. The wind howls again outside, shaking the walls, but inside the fire holds steady, and for a few fragile hours you feel like the cold can't quite reach you. You wake to the sound of silence. Not the peaceful kind. No birds chirping, no wind, not even the groan of the timbers as the house shifts in the cold. This is a heavier silence, a dead, pressing stillness that fills every crack and makes the air feel thicker, like the whole world is holding its breath. You sit up slowly, feeling the crunch of frost beneath your blanket. That's right, frost. Inside, again. The fire must have gone out early, and no one was willing to crawl from their warm spots to stoke it. Your breath hangs in the air in long, lazy clouds, the kind that only happen when the temperature drops into the "why are we even still alive" range. You reach for your boots, again. They're stiff. Of course, still damp, still half frozen, still lying in the exact spot you left them, because if you bring them too close to the fire, the leather will crack. You force your feet in anyway, wincing as the cold swallows your toes. No one's talking. Your family is awake, sure, but everyone's going through the same slow-motion struggle of getting vertical. You see your brother rubbing his arms, your mother pouring water into a pot so slowly you wonder if she's dreaming with her eyes open. She probably is. It's been weeks since any of you got decent sleep. The fire's out, but there's a little wood left. Enough for one good burn. You don't waste time. You drop the last few branches in, strike the flint, and breathe into the flame like your own lungs might make it grow. It catches, weakly, but it catches. You sit close, your knees nearly in the ashes, soaking up the shallow warmth. It doesn't reach your back, but it gets your face, and that's enough for now. Today is one of those days with no single goal, no errand, no harvest, no chopping. It's a day you survive by sheer habit. You wrap your scarf tighter around your neck and step outside just to check if the sky still exists. It does, but just barely. The clouds are thick and grey, low-hanging like bruises stretched across the heavens. You sniff the air. Something's off. It's colder than it should be, sharper, and it's too still. No wind, no sounds. You walk slowly around the cottage, mostly to keep the blood moving, partly out of nervous energy. A crunch behind the barn catches your attention. You round the corner and spot animal tracks, deer maybe, but deeper, heavier. They cross through your backyard and vanish into the trees. You follow them with your eyes, heart rate creeping upward. Not deer, wolves perhaps, or worse. The prints are too big for a fox and too far from the woods for comfort. You head back inside and tell your father. He just nods. They're getting bold, he mutters, pulling his cloak tighter. They can smell how thin the walls are. After a meager breakfast of reheated broth and a single crust of bread, you try to distract yourself. You sit with your younger sister and attempt to teach her how to mend socks. She's 5, so naturally she stabs herself twice and declares, "Sewing is a punishment invented by demons." You laugh. A real laugh. Short, loud, and unexpected. She looks at you like she's just won something. Maybe she has. You glance outside again. Still grey, still silent. That silence gets into your head. After an hour of doing chores just to feel like you're moving, you make your way to the chapel. It's not far, just across the village green, but the walk feels longer in the cold. Every step is an argument between your muscles and your brain. The snow crunches beneath your boots, louder than it should. You swear it echoes. Inside the chapel the air is heavy with incense and cold stone. The priest is there, bundled in a heavy robe, his fingers yellowed and swollen. He's lighting candles at the altar, and the only other person present is an old woman murmuring to herself in the front pew. You sit in the back, your hands buried deep in your sleeves. You're not even here for spiritual guidance. You're here for silence that isn't your house. For walls that feel older and stronger than the ones in your cottage. For warmth, not of the fire kind, but of the being somewhere else kind. Here's your fringe fact. During especially brutal winters, some medieval villagers believed that extended silence outdoors was a sign of supernatural presence. Angels, demons, or even the wild hunt. People said they could feel it in their bones when something unnatural was watching. That kind of silence meant you weren't alone. It meant something was passing through. You try not to think about that as the wind finally starts back up. You hear it whistle through the chapel windows, low and eerie, like the world is exhaling again after holding its breath too long. The priest glances at the door, then back at you. He gives a slow nod, and you return it out of habit. He doesn't speak. You don't need him to. You head home as the snow starts again. Light at first, almost gentle, but the flakes are thick, fat and wet. Warning signs. You pick up your pace. Back inside, your father has decided it's time to burn the last of the kindling. He says it with finality, no drama, just, "That's it, tomorrow we'll go scavenging." The fire roars for once, like it knows it's on borrowed time. Everyone gathers close, legs touch, arms overlap. No one minds. The warmth is worth the crowding. Your mother brings out the small bottle of fermented berry liquor she's been hoarding. She pours a capful into each cup of weak broth and says, "To keep us from freezing in our dreams." You drink it. It's sour, sharp, and stings your throat, but it sends a little glow into your chest. It's the first thing you've tasted in days that didn't make you wince. That night everyone shares stories. Not funny ones exactly, but familiar ones. Like your father falling into the pig trough that one time, or when the goat ate your sister's shoes. You're not laughing hard, but you're smiling, and that's enough. It feels human. Like you've peeled the cold off your bones for an hour. Later, wrapped in every blanket, cloak, and scrap of warmth you own, you drift off. The fire is still burning for now. Your father's still awake, sitting close to it, his silhouette flickering in the glow. He hums something under his breath. Not a song, just sound. Something to hold the silence back. Historians still debate whether medieval winters were worse than the modern climate records show. Some say the Little Ice Age was exaggerated. Others believe the accounts don't go far enough, that peasants like you endured far colder, harsher conditions than any modern model can estimate. You're not a scholar. You don't need charts or weather logs. You know how cold it gets when your tears freeze on your face before they hit the ground. And tonight, you'll dream of heat again, just long enough to forget that tomorrow you have to find firewood in a world made of ice. The fire has gone out again. Of course it has. You could swear the flames are actively plotting against you now, burning fast, too fast, leaving nothing but brittle black splinters and the bitter memory of warmth. You wake to cold so sharp it feels like your skin's wearing ice from the inside out. Your fingers are curled into claws beneath your blanket, and your nose might as well be carved from stone. You shift slightly and hear that now familiar crunch. Frost on fabric. It's a lovely reminder that yes, you did in fact spend the night freezing inside your home. You groan, stretch, and immediately regret both. Every joint resists. Your muscles ache like you were wrestling wolves all night. Your back reminds you that straw mattresses are really just polite piles of hay. You sit up and wrap yourself tighter in your cloak before forcing your reluctant feet into your stiff, cold boots. The left one greets you with a squelch. Still damp? Of course. Your mother is already awake, grinding grain with a look that says she's somewhere between furious and resigned. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. The grindstone speaks for her, its slow, steady rhythm the sound of another morning in a season that never ends. You shuffle to the hearth and kneel down, trying to revive the coals. They're stubborn. You blow, you coax, you pray. Eventually, a small flame flickers to life, and you drop in the last chunk of dry wood with the same reverence you'd give to a holy relic. Breakfast is what you might call symbolic. A scrap of cheese for each person, the heel of a bread loaf that could chip teeth, and a mug of weak broth made from bones that were already boiled twice. It's not enough, not even close. But it keeps your hands busy, your mouths occupied, and your stomachs from making embarrassing noises. For now. Today's goal is survival again, but more specifically, inventory to sepuldo. It's time to go through the food stores in the cellar and see exactly how close to disaster you are. You and your father descend into the root cellar, really just a pit under the cottage with some planks over the top, and brace yourselves. The first thing that hits you is the smell. Earthy, sour, and undeniably alive. You've got mould. Of course you do. Mould loves winter. It loves damp, cold, half-rotted vegetables, and it's throwing a party down here. You step cautiously among the baskets and crates, most of them half empty or worse. The turnips have gone soft and slimy. The last sack of rye is crawling with weevils, and the only thing left in decent shape is the pickled cabbage, which smells like something that once knew hope but gave up halfway. You do a rough count. 2 days' worth of grain, maybe 3 if you dilute it, a handful of dried beans, 1 onion, and the pickled cabbage, which no one wants but everyone will eat because want is a luxury. You glance at your father. He's not angry, he's not panicked, he's just quiet. That's worse. You carry what's still good back upstairs, your feet heavy on each step. When your mother sees the haul, she doesn't sigh, doesn't scold. She just takes the cabbage and starts cutting it like she's chopping firewood. Here's a fringe fact to spice up your stomach-turning morning. In some parts of medieval Europe, people preserved meat by stuffing it in hollowed-out animal stomachs filled with salt and herbs. Sounds gross, absolutely, but it kept food from spoiling. Some historians believe early versions of sausage were less about taste and more about masking rot. Medieval cuisine wasn't exactly farm to table, it was more grave to pan. Outside, the sky is the same bruised grey it's been for weeks. The snow has a crust now, ice on top of powder. Every step crunches like you're walking across a field of broken pottery. You've been asked to check on your uncle, who lives on the other side of the village. He's old, slow and stubborn, the kind of man who insists he's fine even when he's coughing up things that should probably be buried. You bundle up, of course, layer after layer, until you feel like a badly assembled scarecrow. The wind hits you the moment you open the door, slipping between the seams of your cloak and licking at your spine. You trudge across the village, head down, arms crossed, boots cracking through the frozen crust. Your breath clouds the air like smoke from a dying fire. Your uncle's house is barely standing, the roof is patchy, the door sways in its frame, and the windows are more cloth than glass. You knock anyway, no answer. You push the door open and step inside. He's alive, barely. Sitting by a cold hearth, wrapped in every bit of fabric he owns, trying to light a fire with twigs and spite. You kneel beside him, coax the coals back to life and add a stick from your coat pocket. Yes, you brought your own firewood. You're a better relative than most saints. He coughs a thank you and hands you a bowl. There's a sliver of meat inside where he got it. You don't ask. You take it. Eat it. It's chewy, salty, and surprisingly warm. It feels like stealing from time itself. You stay for an hour, maybe 2, mostly in silence. The fire grows. His cough softens. You don't say much because there's not much to say. Words don't change the weather, or bring back food, or patch roofs, but presence means something. It has to. When you return home, the sun's already slipping away again, hiding behind clouds like it owes you money. You find your sister huddled near the fire, poking a pot of something vaguely edible. She beams when she sees you and offers a bite. It's a miracle stew. Cabbage, beans, and just enough salt to trick your tongue into thinking it might be flavourful. Dinner passes quietly. You eat slowly, deliberately, savouring every bite like it might be your last. It won't be, probably, but it might be one of the last warm ones for a while. You can feel that. Your body knows things your brain hasn't quite accepted yet. The burn of hunger, the ache of cold, the math of survival. Later that night, wrapped in layers and half dozing by the fire, your mother tells a story. Something from her childhood, a winter even worse than this one, where the snow reached the thatch and they had to dig tunnels just to walk between cottages. Her voice is soft, slow, almost hypnotic. You close your eyes and try to picture it. Not the snow, but the endurance. Historians still argue about the psychological toll of medieval winters. They debate whether people suffered from what we'd now call seasonal depression, or if their expectations were just lower. If misery was so constant that no one even noticed. But you do, you notice. Every freezing toe, every aching belly, every slow, deliberate day you don't die as another tiny rebellion. And so you fall asleep with one arm wrapped around your sister and one foot still cold despite 3 pairs of socks, dreaming of food that doesn't come in jars and skies that don't weigh so much. You wake to the sound of bells, not the usual creak and groan of the house settling, not the wind yowling through the thatch, but real honest-to-God bells, loud, clear, ringing, from the chapel tower in the centre of the village. You jolt upright, your brain sluggish, your heart racing. The fire is still crackling faintly behind you, and someone, probably your mother, has already placed a kettle of water over it. But it's the bells that matter, because today isn't just another day of scraping by. Today is a feast day, not a feast like you're picturing. There's no buffet table or music or heaping platters of roasted anything. This is still medieval winter, not a Renaissance fair. But it's St. Hildeberta's Day, patroness of the harvest or healing or sheep, depending on who you ask, and that means the church is hosting Mass, followed by a community meal, which is just a fancy way of saying a slightly better bowl of stew eaten in a slightly colder building with slightly more people watching you eat it. But still, you're going. You pull yourself together, layer up, and eat a bite of something crumbly and oat-based before trudging with your family into the snow. The wind is quieter today, more like a whisper than a scream, and for a moment you feel almost hopeful. The sky is grey as always, but there's a brightness just behind it, like the sun's thinking about showing up if it feels like it. The chapel is packed. People are shoulder to shoulder, squished into pews or leaning against stone walls. The floor is damp from melting snow off everyone's boots, and the smell of sweat, smoke and wet wool hits you hard the moment you walk in. Still, there's energy here, a rare buzz. People smile, nod to each other, share half-hearted jokes about the cold and the latest gossip. Who traded what for a bit of pork? Who claims to have seen wolves by the woods? Who passed out drunk in a snowbank and got frostbite on his backside? The priest begins the service, and his voice echoes through the stone arches. You try to pay attention. Really, you do, but your stomach keeps growling and your fingers are still half numb. You're not the only one. A few kids fidget. A baby cries. The woman next to you keeps shifting her weight like her knees are about to give out. You murmur the responses and stand when you're supposed to, kneel when it's time, and mostly pray that the meal comes soon. When the service ends, everyone filters out slowly, heading to the hall next door. Tables have been set up, long wooden boards on barrels, and big pots of stew are already steaming over fires. The smell is amazing. Not just onions and water this time. There's meat in there, real meat. Bits of pork, maybe. You see chunks of carrot. Carrot! It feels almost indecent. You line up with your family, bowl in hand, trying to look reverent and not like you're one good sniff away from leaping into the pot. When your turn comes, the volunteer ladles a generous portion into your bowl and gives you a wink. Eat slow, she says. Pretend it's twice as much. You do. You sit on a bench, bowl cradled in your hands, and take the smallest bites possible. The stew is thick, warm, and slightly spicy. Someone definitely found some pepper to throw in. Each spoonful feels like medicine. Your belly doesn't know what to do with food that tastes good. You want to cry and chew at the same time. Across the table, you see faces you haven't seen in weeks. Maren's there, the girl who went missing for a day. She looks thinner, pale, but she smiles when you catch her eye. You lift your spoon in a quiet salute. She nods. There's no need to talk about where she was or how bad things got. If she's here, she made it. That's enough. You finish the stew too quickly and sit with your empty bowl, half listening to the conversations around you. People are bartering, planning firewood runs, discussing who's got extra salt or a chicken willing to trade eggs for turnip greens. No one's laughing exactly, but there's talking, which is more than most days get. It's like this brief feast has loosened everyone's tongues. A man at the next table stands up and starts reciting a tale, something about a winter long ago, when a giant froze to death because he tried to steal bread from St. Hildeberta herself. It's a silly story, obviously made up, but people chuckle and lean in to listen. You like the sound, you like the warmth. Here's your quirky historical twist of the day. Feast days in medieval Europe weren't just religious events, they were also survival checkpoints. Some villages structured their entire winter around them, because if you could just make it to the next feast, you would get at least one decent meal, one warm thaw, one afternoon of not dying. Saints were basically your seasonal sponsors. They couldn't fix winter, but they could throw you a bowl of stew now and then. Back at home, spirits are a little higher. Your mother is humming. Your brother is pretending he didn't slurp the stew loud enough to wake the dead. You huddle by the fire and talk about nothing important, how the snow's changing texture, whether it'll freeze hard again tonight, if the cow might be pregnant. It's all small stuff, but you hold on to it like it matters, because right now it does. You remember a debate your father once had with the village miller. Whether it's better to be warm and hungry or fed and freezing. The answer changes every day. Today you were fed. Tomorrow, who knows? The warmth from the church stew won't last more than a few hours, and you'll be back to scraping together soup from boiled pebbles if you're lucky. As night falls, you huddle around the fire and your sister insists on retelling the story of the stew-guarding saint. She gets all the details wrong, forgets who froze and who got blessed, but no one corrects her. Her voice is soft and sing-song, and when she says, "And then the sky opened up and poured bread like snow," you close your eyes and pretend to see it. Historians still puzzle over whether these feast days were more spiritual or strategic. Was it faith that pulled people through, or just calories and community in disguise? It's hard to say, but tonight, lying close to your family, belly warm, hands no longer shaking, you think maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe survival is always a little bit sacred. You wake up coughing, and not the polite kind either. It's the kind that scrapes up from your chest like it's dragging old rust with it. Your throat burns and your ribs feel bruised. You sit up, wheezing, trying to catch your breath in the cold morning air, which does absolutely nothing to help. The fire's gone out again naturally, and the smoke from last night's half-burned logs still lingers, sour and heavy, curling against the ceiling like it hasn't found its way out yet. You cough again and feel the pressure building behind your eyes. Yep, that's a fever. Your mother is already awake. She takes one look at you, frowns, and presses the back of her hand to your forehead. "Too warm," she mutters, which is kind of hilarious considering the air is freezing and your fingers still feel like icicles. She immediately wraps another cloth around your shoulders, like more fabric can fix lungs full of smoke and frostbite. It's a nice thought, though. Your father, of course, is already outside. You can hear the axe hitting wood. Chop. Pause. Cough. Chop. He's been trying to split wet branches for the last 2 days, refusing to admit that they're mostly useless and splinter more than they burn. But it's not about efficiency anymore. It's about motion. About doing something, anything that makes you feel like you still have some control over this godforsaken season. Your younger brother wakes up coughing too, and you exchange a look. That's not good. You know that look, that we're all getting it now look. One person gets sick in winter, and it doesn't stop with one. The house is too small, too cold, and too crowded for illness not to spread. There's nowhere to isolate, nowhere to warm up, and forget about rest. Rest is a luxury for people who can take a day off from survival. Breakfast is watery gruel with a dash of pickled turnip juice. It's supposed to help with digestion. All it helps with is ruining your sense of taste. You eat it anyway. It goes down like wet sand but sits warm in your stomach, and that's something. Afterward, your mother makes you sip a boiled nettle tea with honey, scraped from the last jar in the cupboard. It's bitter and sweet and scalding hot. You swear it both burns and soothes at the same time. You spend the rest of the morning half wrapped in a blanket near the hearth, watching the flame do its best to pretend it's not dying out. Your sister brings you a carved wooden figure from the pile in the corner, the one shaped like a lopsided rabbit, and sets it on your knee like a charm. "You'll feel better by tonight," she says in that little girl certainty that doesn't leave room for argument. You nod and smile, because what else can you do? Outside, the wind is picking up again. You hear it moan through the trees and whistle under the door. Snowflakes swirl past the window like sparks from some otherworldly forge, and the clouds are the colour of dirty wool. Another storm is coming. Just what you need, more isolation, more cold, more wet socks. You drift in and out of sleep throughout the afternoon, sweat sticking your shirt to your back and your face flushing hot and cold in waves. You dream of summer, of green fields and warm loaves of bread and drinking water that isn't frozen in the bucket. In the dream, your family is laughing around a fire, and no one is coughing. You wake up coughing. Here's a grim little slice of history for your day. Most medieval homes had no real ventilation. Chimneys were rare in peasant houses, so smoke from the hearth just hung in the air like a fog of slow death. Add in the cold, the damp, the overcrowding, and it's no wonder winter illnesses swept through whole villages like plagues. It wasn't just the cold that killed people, it was the coughing, the kind that started in the throat and ended in the grave. Later a neighbour stops by, a healer of sorts, or at least someone who's read more herb books than most. She's wrapped in 6 layers of wool and smells like garlic and dried mint. She kneels beside you, touches your wrist, and nods like she knows something. She pulls a small satchel from her bag and drops a pinch of something bitter into a clay cup. "Drink this," she says. "It'll make you sweat." You do. You already are. She stays a few minutes, checks on your brother too, and warns your mother to boil everything twice and burn the used cloths. Winter's breath, she calls it. That's what they name the cough when it lingers and takes people slowly. There's no cure, only care. After she leaves, your mother starts boiling every scrap of linen in the house. You can smell the soap root rising with the steam. She hangs them on a string across the room, which does absolutely nothing for the decor but makes her feel like she's doing something useful. And honestly, that matters more than results sometimes. Dinner is thin cabbage soup again. But this time there's a tiny piece of salted pork dropped in. You don't ask where it came from, you just chew it slowly and let the salt sting your raw throat. Your father claims it was from a trade, but your mother won't meet his eyes when he says it. Doesn't matter. It's food. As night falls, your fever spikes. You feel it rising like a tide. You sweat, then shiver, then sweat again. You strip layers off only to put them back on minutes later. Your family keeps the fire alive through the night, using every scrap of wood they have left. You hear someone sob quietly once, maybe your sister, maybe not. You don't open your eyes. Historians debate whether medieval peasants really understood the causes of illness. Some say they blamed bad air or angry spirits. Others believe they had a surprisingly intuitive grasp of contagion. They just didn't have the words for it. All you know is, your body is boiling from the inside, and the cold outside still manages to reach your fingertips. You fall asleep clutching the wooden rabbit. Or maybe it's holding you. You can't tell anymore. And in the dark, the wind returns, louder now, slamming against the door like it's trying to come inside. Morning sneaks in with no fanfare, no sunrise worth the name, just a dull light leaking through the gaps in the wall, making everything look pale and washed out. You open your eyes slowly, surprised that you even managed to sleep. Your body aches in a new way, not sharp and feverish like last night, but like something inside you's been wrung out, emptied, and left to dry over a fence in winter wind. Your skin is clammy, your hair's stuck to your forehead, but you're breathing, and that's the day's first small miracle. The hearth is still burning. Barely. Someone must have fed it through the night. Probably your father, judging by the trail of ash across the floor. He must have stayed up again. You hear his cough before you see him, low and rattling, like someone trying to clear gravel from their throat. It doesn't stop. You wince with every hacking sound. It's worse today, louder, deeper. A familiar fear creeps in behind your ribs. You sit up slowly, wrapped in your blanket like it's armour. Your body feels like it's been packed in snow, your joints stiff, your nose still cold even after a night next to the fire. Your mother gives you a once-over and nods. Still warm but less, she says quietly. She sounds tired in a way that goes beyond lack of sleep. Tired in the bones, tired in the soul. She hands you a cup of hot water, not tea, just hot water. The herbs are gone now, so's the honey. You sip it anyway, grateful for the heat sliding down your throat. It makes your stomach twist like it just remembered what hunger is. You glance at the pot near the fire. Soup again, of course, the usual pale broth, maybe with a shred of cabbage if you're lucky. But before breakfast is even done, there's a new problem. Smoke. Thick and grey, curling low and slow across the ceiling. Not from the hearth. This is darker, heavier, crawling like it has weight. Your father's eyes go wide, he bolts upright and throws open the door. A blast of cold air rushes in, and behind it you see the source. The chimney's clogged. Great, what little smoke should have gone up is now pouring in, filling the room with a choking fog. Your sister starts coughing, followed by your brother, and soon everyone's fanning the air, shouting, scrambling. Your mother shouts for everyone to get outside, and for once, no one argues. You stumble out into the snow, gasping. Your lungs are already raw, and the smoke's made them worse. Your cough returns immediately, deep and painful, like your chest is folding in on itself. Out in the cold, your body starts to shake violently. The heat from the fire is gone, replaced by wind and snowflakes that melt on your skin and freeze again instantly. Your mother wraps a cloak around your shoulders, but it doesn't help much. Your father is already on the roof trying to dislodge whatever's blocking the flue. Probably a bird's nest, maybe snow packed too tight. You watch him work, silhouetted against the grey sky, just one more shape against the winter. And here's your charming historical fact of the day. Before chimneys were common in homes, many medieval cottages just had a hole in the roof. That's it. A hole. And sometimes not even that. The smoke from the hearth simply filled the house, found the cracks, and escaped however it could. This meant indoor air was so thick with soot. Most homes had ceilings as black as a coal pit. And it also meant people spent their winters coughing into smoky darkness, often poisoning themselves slowly without even realising it. Eventually your father clears the blockage and the smoke starts to lift. The cottage still stinks of it, the walls smudged, the air gritty. But at least the fire draws properly again. Everyone files back inside, shivering and shaken. Your sister curls up in the corner with her blanket over her head. Your brother sits cross-legged near the door, face pale. You all look like survivors of a small, very smoky war. No one speaks for a while. The fire's been fed again, burning higher now, but the comfort it offers feels thinner than before, like you've all realised just how fragile the balance is, how one blocked chimney can turn your entire house into a death trap. Lunch comes late. The soup is watery and bland, but hot. You sip it slowly, letting the steam hit your face. Your father doesn't eat much. He's still coughing. It's not good. You can tell by how he leans forward when he does, as if trying not to break something inside. Your mother watches him with that same expression she wore when she pressed her hand to your forehead. Calm, focused, and deeply worried. Later, she asks you to help her collect more wood. Not from the forest this time. It's too dangerous with your lungs the way they are. Just around the edge of the village, gathering branches blown down by the wind. You agree, even though your legs still feel like wet sticks. You wrap up again and head out. The air outside is clearer now, but colder. A sharp, biting kind of cold that finds your ears, your nose, the cracks between your fingers. You move slowly, scanning the ground for fallen limbs, snapping smaller branches off with numb hands. A few other villagers are out too, most with the same goal. No one talks, just nods. You're all on the same mission. Find something to burn before the next night arrives and burns you instead. You return with an armful. Not much, but enough for a few hours. Your mother smiles when she sees you. That smile means everything. It's the only thing in the house that still feels warm without being on fire. That night, your father's cough worsens. He can't sleep. You hear him shifting, groaning, muttering to himself in the dark. Your mother sits beside him, sponging his forehead with snowmelt and whispering prayers under her breath. Not dramatic prayers, the kind you repeat because you're too afraid not to. And here's where the scholars still scratch their heads. Was it the smoke, the cold, the crowding? What made winter illnesses so deadly in homes like yours? They debate it, circle around it, throw theories at it, but you're living it. The answer's all of it. Everything at once. You don't get one cause of sickness. You get 5, maybe 6 if the roof leaks again. You lie awake most of the night, listening. To the wind, the fire, your father's breathing. You wonder which one will stop first. The next morning feels like it forgot to start. No sunlight, no birdsong, no moment of slow warming. Just the same dead grey as yesterday, and the same shiver in your spine that never really went away. You open your eyes to the sound of your father coughing again, if it can even be called that anymore. It's more like his lungs are trying to leave his body one ragged breath at a time. The sound echoes through the small room, like a warning bell no one wants to hear. He's sitting upright now, propped against the wall, a blanket pulled up to his chin and his face pale as chalk. He's not speaking, just staring at the fire. Not watching it, staring at it, like he's trying to remember what it means. Your mother's beside him, dipping a cloth into a bowl of melted snow and wiping his face. Her movements are soft but mechanical, like her body's on autopilot while her mind drifts somewhere far away, probably toward the days when the winters weren't quite this cruel and her husband didn't sound like a dying bellows. You sit up slowly, head pounding. Your fever's broken mostly. The sweat-soaked shirt clings to your back and your throat is raw. But your breathing comes easier now. That counts as a win. Your mother nods at you, almost a smile, but there's no joy in her eyes. She points to the fire. It's low, just embers now, and someone needs to tend it. That someone is you. You pull yourself upright, groaning as your legs protest. The cold's deep in your bones today, and your left foot feels like it's been dipped in ice water all night. You hobble to the woodpile, which has now officially shrunk to the size of a pitiful bundle. You pick 2 sticks, maybe 3, and feed them into the hearth like you're trying to bribe it to stay alive. The flames rise slowly, reluctantly. There's barely enough food for breakfast, so you don't bother calling it that. You each get half a mug of boiled barley water, just enough to pretend it's something more substantial. You chew the soft grains like they're meat and let the warm liquid burn a little on the way down. At least it quiets the hunger pangs for a while. Then comes the second discovery of the day, and it's even worse than the first. Tracks. Big ones. Near the edge of the yard, just past where the snow dips toward the woods, you spot them. Paw prints pressed deep into the fresh snow. Huge, uneven, and fresh enough that they haven't been dusted over. You crouch near them, your breath catching. You've seen wolf prints before, sure, but these are closer than they've ever been. Too close. You look up and scan the trees, heart thudding hard now. There's nothing there, but it doesn't mean you're alone. You run back to the cottage and call for your brother. He steps outside, still sleepy-eyed, and follows you silently. You point. He stares at the prince for a long time and mutters something under his breath that sounds suspiciously like a prayer. Then, without being asked, he turns and starts reinforcing the goat shed door. He doesn't wait for instructions. He just knows. Because when wolves get this close, it's not just curiosity, it's desperation. You've heard the stories. Everyone has. Stories of wolves sneaking into villages, snatching chickens, even dragging dogs or children into the forest. They don't fear people when they're starving. Hunger makes them brave and stupid and terrifying. And here's your fringe fact to liven things up. During some of the harshest winters in Europe, wolf attacks weren't just rumours. They were recorded in official documents. France had whole winter seasons dubbed wolf winters, when packs entered towns and cities looking for food. In 1450, one village allegedly built spiked barriers around their homes after a pack dragged away a priest. No one really knows if the priest story is true, but the fear, that was very real. You and your brother spend the rest of the morning strengthening everything you can. You drag planks from the broken stool and nail them across the lower half of the door. You patch gaps in the walls with whatever cloth and mud you can find. You even prop a shovel beside the entrance, just in case. Inside, your father's cough slows to a low rattle. It doesn't seem better, it just seems quieter. That's worse. Your mother keeps feeding him broth he barely swallows, wiping his forehead and whispering things you can't hear. You're starting to see it in her face now, not just worry, but calculation. Measuring the firewood, the food, the energy, measuring how much longer he has, how much longer you all have. That afternoon, you decide to try for more wood. Not in the deep forest, you're not suicidal, but along the edge, where fallen branches sometimes collect in little pockets. You take your brother with you and bring the sled. It creaks loudly as you drag it behind you, every bump in the snow like a drumbeat for some terrible parade. You reach the edge of the trees and pause. It's quiet. Too quiet. You both listen, scan the snow, and step carefully into the woods. The branches above are heavy with snow, bending like they might snap at any second. You gather what you can, mostly thin, brittle branches and a one good log that probably weighs more than both of you combined. It's slow work. Your fingers go numb. Your nose runs. Your toes burn, then don't. You hear something then, just beyond the trees, not the wind, a crack. Footsteps. You freeze. You and your brother both go still like prey animals. You look at each other, silently counting. 1, 2, 3. Then you grab the sled and head back the way you came. Fast, not running, but not strolling either. You don't look back until the trees are behind you. You don't see anything, but you know something saw you. Back home, you unload the wood. No one asks where it came from. Your mother just takes it and feeds the fire with trembling hands. She's not scared of the cold anymore. She's scared of what comes with it. That night you sleep lightly. Every creak of the house makes you jolt awake. The wind howls louder. Something scratches at the barn wall. Probably a branch, hopefully. You lie still, eyes open, and listen to your father breathe. In, out, in, then pause. Then thank God. Again. You wake before the others, still dressed, still wrapped in the same scratchy blanket you have had since autumn. The one that smells faintly of old smoke, onions, and, let's be honest, mild regret. The fire's burned down to glowing red coals, and the room is thick with silence. Not the restful kind, but the heavy waiting kind. You sit up slowly, every joint creaking, your breath puffing out in pale clouds. Across the room, your father's shape lies still under a pile of quilts, and for a long second you're afraid to check if he's breathing. But then his chest rises. Shallow, but there. You let out a sigh and quietly stoke the fire, feeding it the smallest twigs from the bottom of the pile. There's barely anything left. You'll need to go scavenging again today, probably deeper this time, closer to the forest, maybe even into it. The thought makes your stomach twist. Outside, the sky is still dark. Winter doesn't wake up early, and neither does the sun. You pull on your boots, stiff, lined with straw that has gone sour, and slip out into the snow. It's a fresh layer, clean and smooth, coating everything in the soft curves, but it's deceptive. Underneath, the ground is like frozen iron. You step carefully, scanning the horizon. Then you hear it. A clang, metal on metal, dull but distinct, carried on the cold air like an echo from some ancient bell tower. You freeze. It's coming from the far side of the village, down near the road where the watchtower stands. The old tower hasn't been used in years, but someone's ringing the bell. You move fast now, slipping between cottages, crunching through the snow. You're not the only one. A few others emerge from their homes, cloaked and confused, peering toward the sound. Something's wrong. Something big enough to wake up the entire village. You reach the clearing where the bell tower stands, really just a wooden platform on stilts, the bell hung beneath a crooked roof, and see a figure leaning against the support beam. It's Halric, one of the watchmen, or at least he was before winter claimed most of the town's schedules and sanity. He's pale, wind-chapped and shaking. Tracks, he mutters to no one in particular. Too many, too close. You follow his gaze out toward the edge of the woods, and there they are. Footprints, not just wolves, people too, multiple sets, leading in from the trees, circling the southern edge of the village, then disappearing again into the snow. You kneel to examine them. The wolf prints are large, far larger than any lone beast, and deep, fresh, but it is the boot prints that make your stomach drop. No one from the village went out that way last night. These are strangers' prints, and they came right up to the outer cottages. Bandits. You've heard of them, of course. Desperate people driven to worse things by worse hunger. Men who used to be farmers or soldiers or servants, now roving in packs, stealing what they need, or want, from anyone with less strength or fewer weapons. Winter makes monsters out of men faster than anything else. You head back quickly, not running, but walking like you've suddenly got a destination more important than anything else in the world. Your boots crunch through the snow, the cold nips at your neck. Your breath fogs the air like a warning. When you reach the cottage, your mother is already up. You tell her what you saw. She doesn't flinch. She doesn't gasp. She just presses her lips into a thin line and says, "We'll need to post watches tonight." Your brother is less calm. He grabs the iron poker from the hearth and starts pacing. "We don't have enough to steal," he mutters. "Why us?" You don't answer. Because the truth is, you do have something. You have firewood, barely. You have a goat. You have 3 bowls of solace soup if you ration carefully. And in a winter like this, that's enough to make you a target. You spend the rest of the day preparing, not for survival, but for defence. You reinforce the shutters with spare boards, nail the back door shut, tie a rope to the inside of the main door so it can't be pushed open from outside. It's not much, but it's something. Your brother sharpens sticks, your mother sharpens words. You take the first night watch. You sit near the fire, not for warmth, but for the light, clutching the wooden club your uncle left behind last spring. It's heavy and cracked, but comforting in its own way. Your eyes flick to the window every few minutes, scanning the dark for movement, listening for footsteps or howls. Here's your historical nugget for tonight. Some villages during the medieval period actually hired night watchmen in winter, not to watch for fire, but for wolves and raiders. It wasn't uncommon for peasants to sleep in shifts, always leaving one person awake to guard the food and the fire, not because they feared beasts, but because they feared each other. Hours pass. The house sleeps behind you, your father groaning softly now and then, your sister murmuring something in a dream. The fire crackles low and quiet. You sip a bit of broth to stay alert. It's weak but warm. And then, movement. Not much. A shadow across the window, a flicker of motion at the edge of your vision. You freeze, breath caught in your throat. You wait. Nothing. Then again, movement. You rise silently, grip the club tighter, step toward the door and press your ear to the wood. The wind is light, the snow quiet. But then, soft, crunching footsteps. Someone's out there. You swallow hard and knock on the wall behind you. Once, then twice. The signal. Your brother stirs. You hear him grab his stick and step into the room. He nods. He's ready. You wait. Nothing happens, no knock, no voice, no noise. And then, just when your shoulders start to relax, a long, low howl splits the air. Close. Too close. You and your brother exchange a glance, then another howl, this time farther off, but joined by another, and another. A chorus of hunger. You don't open the door, you don't move, you just stand there in the dark, breathing shallowly, gripping your club while the night sings its teeth-filled song just beyond the wall. Eventually it stops. The snow falls again, gently, and the silence returns. You don't sleep the rest of the night. By morning, you're still standing, though your knees feel like they have been replaced with soft bread and your grip on the club has turned your fingers into frozen claws. The house is quiet again, eerily so. Even the usual morning coughs and clatters are late to arrive. You take one shaky breath, step away from the door, and finally let yourself sit down. Your whole body trembles, not from fear anymore, but from pure exhaustion. Your brother gives you a tight nod and takes over the watch, even though the sun is beginning to rise, barely. You curl up next to the hearth, not to sleep, but just to thaw. The fire is nearly gone, reduced to sullen embers, but you can't bring yourself to feed it. Not yet. You just sit there, blank-eyed, listening to the occasional creak of the house and trying not to picture what was on the other side of that door last night. Eventually your mother emerges from the sleeping corner, face lined with worry and eyes sunken from a night of little sleep and too many prayers. She sees your face and doesn't ask what happened. Doesn't need to. She just places a hand on your head and then stirs the fire back to life with the last of the dry kindling. Your father didn't sleep well either. His coughing came in waves all night, rattling from deep within his chest like something trying to break out. He seemed smaller this morning, not in size exactly, but in presence. Like the sickness is chipping away at him bit by bit. He's awake now, staring blankly at the roof beams, his breath short and his mouth dry. Your mother feeds him a spoonful of barley broth, which he swallows with difficulty. There's nothing left to do except the most dangerous thing imaginable. Leave. You have to go out. The firewood's down to twigs and scraps. The food's worse, half a turnip, 3 dried beans, and a crust of stale bread that smells like it gave up weeks ago. If you want to make it through another few days, you need supplies. Firewood. Maybe something to eat. Something to burn. You decide to try the river path today, not the deep woods, but the trail that runs beside the frozen creek. It's risky. That path is barely used anymore, and can be treacherous when the ice shifts. But it's quiet, and sometimes branches collect there after storms. If you're lucky, maybe even a carcass, something the wolves left behind. You set out just after noon, bundled in every layer you own. The wind is up again, the snow falls in loose flurries, swirling like feathers from a dying pillow. You carry the small sled behind you, its rope looped around your wrist, dragging with a mournful squeak. Every step is a crunch, then a slide. The path is slippery, the river to your left a white sheet, silent and sealed in its winter shell. About a mile in, you see the tracks. Animal again. Wolf, definitely. A few older human prints too, faded and snowed over, leading up toward the trees. You keep your eyes down and your ears open. The forest around you crackles and groans. Branches shift. Snow drips in lazy, heavy drops. You pass a cluster of pines, bent low under the weight of ice, and there, underneath, a lucky find. A fallen tree, still solid, mostly dry. Not much, but enough to split into kindling if you can drag it back. You set the sled down and begin breaking the limbs. The wood snaps with sharp cracks, echoing through the trees. Every sound makes you flinch. You're exposed out here, wide open. As you work, the wind changes, shifts like something just passed through it. You stand still, listen. Nothing, then something. A faint yelp. Not canine, human. A cry short and clipped. You spin around, heart pounding. Then silence again. You scan the horizon, the tree line, the empty white stretch of the frozen river. Nothing. Your blood is humming now, your breath short. You shouldn't investigate. That's how people end up dead. Chasing sounds, chasing shadows. But you go anyway. You move slowly, gripping the axe you brought for splitting logs, and walk down the path a few hundred feet. Then you see it. Boot prints. Fresh. Deep, heading out across the river ice, and at the end of them, nothing, no return prints. Just a single path halfway across the river, then a cluster of torn snow, a few scuffs and marks, and then nothing. You edge toward the bank, staring across the ice. The surface looks solid, but not trustworthy. You can see faint fractures like spiderwebs under a thin sheet of glass. You know what this is. Someone tried to cross, and the ice gave out. There's no body. Maybe it was swept under. Maybe it's still there, under the surface. You don't look long, your stomach turns, you back away carefully, and return to your sled. You load the wood quickly, hands trembling. You feel like you're being watched. Not by wolves, not even by people, just by something. Something old and cold and deeply indifferent to your survival. Here's a strange fact to haunt your next bowl of stew. During severe winters, villagers sometimes crossed frozen rivers to shorten trips, even though they knew how dangerous it was. The path across was risky, but often faster than going around. And sometimes it worked, until it didn't. There are stories of whole ox carts vanishing through ice never found. Of travellers who walked out and simply didn't return. You make it back just before dark. Your arms burn, your face stings, and your boots are soaked. You drag the sled into the yard and unload the wood. Your mother doesn't ask where you got it. She just kisses your forehead and gets to work. Your sister runs to help, excited to have something solid to burn again. Even your brother looks relieved. You tell them what you saw, most of it. Not the feeling, not the emptiness at the end of the tracks. Just the noise, the prints, the reminder. Your mother crosses herself. Your brother stares at the fire like it might hold an answer. That night the house is quiet again. Not peaceful, not safe, just waiting. You curl up next to the hearth, sore and exhausted, and close your eyes. You see the cracked ice behind your lids, and you know, as the wind whistles past the window, that the river claimed someone today, and winter didn't even blink. The monastery sits on the far hill like a stone sleeping giant, its slanted roof covered in snow, its windows dark but somehow watching. It's not a place you go often. It's not a place anyone goes often unless they've got something to offer or something to beg for. But today, your mother sends you and your brother with a cloth-wrapped bundle, a gift, a bribe, a prayer in physical form. Inside is a small loaf of rye bread, dried herbs, and the better part of your dwindling hope. It's all you can spare, and it's meant to buy a night's warmth. Not for you, for your father. His fever is back. Bad. He coughed up blood this morning, staining the blanket and the floor. He won't eat. He can barely speak. His lips are cracked, and his eyes dart around like he's not sure what year it is. Your mother begged the healer to return, but she's off helping another family. Too many sick, not enough herbs. So now you're walking to the monks, because if anyone has medicine, or even just dry space and fire, it's them. The road to the monastery winds through frozen fields and tight woods. It's not far, but the snow is heavy today. Thick, wet, clinging to your boots with every step. You and your brother don't talk much as you walk. Just the sound of breath and snow crunching, and now and then the creak of branches overhead. The air smells like pine and smoke and the sharp edge of coming sleet. When the monastery gates finally appear, you both stop. It's imposing in a way that makes your shoulders hunch instinctively. The wooden doors are closed, of course, flanked by stone walls and a pair of iron hinges bigger than your head. Your brother knocks 3 times with the heavy iron knocker, and the sound echoes like it's knocking on winter itself. Eventually a small hatch opens. A bearded face peers out. "Yes." You hold up the bundle. "Please, our father's sick. We've come for help." There's a pause, a long one. The monk doesn't move, doesn't speak. Then finally he opens the door just wide enough up enough for the two of you to slip through. "Leave your weapons," he says. You show your hands. "Nothing but frostbite and desperation," your brother mutters. The monk snorts and waves you in. Inside it's warmer than expected. Stone walls, yes, but thick and well sealed, and the fire in the main hall glows like a small sun. The scent is almost overwhelming after the frozen flatness of home. Beeswax, old wood, incense, and bread. Fresh bread. You nearly stagger from it. There are other monks moving quietly through the halls, their robes swishing, their faces calm and unreadable. You're led to a small chamber, plain, with a table, a chair, and a brazier, burning hot. A different monk, older, with silver in his beard and eyes that look like they've seen 10,000 winters, sits and gestures for you to explain. You do. You tell him about your father's condition, about the blood, the cold, the healer being gone, the desperation. He listens, hands folded. When you're finished, he takes the bundle, unwraps it, and inspects the bread. He smells it, breaks off a piece, he then says, "We'll send Brother Marek with you. He has tonics. Your father should be kept warm and given rest, and is there broth in the home?" You nod. Sort of. He stands. That will have to do. The monk who led you in, Marek apparently, joins you a few minutes later, carrying a leather satchel full of bottles and herbs. He wears a wool cloak, thick and lined with fur, and hands your brother one to borrow for the walk back. "You'll return it," he says, like it's not a question. You head back quickly, the monk walking in brisk, silent steps behind you. You glance at him now and then, curious. He's not like the other monks you've seen. There's something in the way he watches the trees, something in how he keeps his hand near his belt like he expects trouble. You wonder what he did before he joined the monastery. On the way home, he shares a few rules for winter illness. Keep the fire high, rotate the patient to avoid lung rot, don't let them sweat too much without drying their linens. He asks about the colour of the blood, bright or dark. You tell him, and he nods. Not good, but not death yet. Back at the cottage, your mother looks relieved, almost tearful to see him. He doesn't waste time. He goes straight to your father, unpacks a vial, and drips something bitter into his mouth. This will make him sleep, and he must sleep, he says. The monk stays for nearly 2 hours, checking the fire, grinding herbs, and instructing your mother in low tones. Before he leaves, he places 2 small wrapped bundles on the table, a tonic and a salve for his chest. Heat it with water. He looks at you, his eyes sharp. Keep him turned every few hours, don't let the lungs fill. You nod. Thank you. He nods once, then pulls the fur cloak from your brother's shoulders, shakes the snow from it, and walks back into the storm without another word. After he's gone, the house is quiet again. Your father sleeps for once. His breathing is still laboured, but it's steady. Your mother sits at the table with the salve in her hands, not even moving, just holding it like it's a candle made of gold. That night the fire burns high. For once you're not the one tending it. Your brother volunteers, his face unreadable. You wrap yourself in the monk's words, replaying every instruction like scripture. You turn your father gently every few hours. You wipe his brow. You keep the air warm and the window cracked just a sliver for the smoke. Here's your historical oddity for the evening. While monks in medieval Europe were known for copying manuscripts and brewing ale, many were also de facto doctors. Some had entire gardens devoted to medicinal herbs, valerian for sleep, yarrow for wounds, horehound for cough. Their medical knowledge was a blend of scripture, superstition, and trial and error. And while some of it was wildly ineffective, a surprising amount actually worked. You don't know if any of this will work, but it's more than you had yesterday. And for the first time in days, the night feels less like a trap and more like a pause. Like the house is holding still, breathing with you. You fall asleep to the sound of your father not coughing, and that stillness is the sweetest thing you've heard in weeks. You wake to something rare, quiet. Not the uneasy silence of fear or frost, but something gentler. A stillness that feels earned, like the house itself has exhaled. The fire is still glowing warmly, and the air doesn't sting your nose when you breathe in. It takes you a moment to remember why things feel different. Then you hear it. Your father snoring. Softly, rhythmically, with no wheeze, no bloody cough rattling out of his lungs like nails in a bucket. You sit up slowly, watching his chest rise and fall under the pile of blankets. Your mother is still asleep, curled up on the floor with her arm resting on the stool like she meant to sit just for a second and gave into exhaustion. You drape a spare shawl over her and tend the fire, careful not to disturb the balance the monk helped create. The room smells of herbs and smoke, but it's no longer the choking stench of sickness. It's earthy, lived in, dare you say healthy. You eat a quick breakfast of reheated barley mush, scraping the pot to get the last of it. You chew slowly, knowing there's no more grain until the next village cart passes through, which could be days, if it comes at all. Still, even a thin belly feels easier to carry when the air doesn't taste like sorrow. Mid-morning, your father stirs. Not much, just a flicker of the eyes and a few murmured words, but your mother is up in a second, rushing to his side. He looks at her, bleary-eyed but focused. "Too hot," he rasps. A complaint. A normal one. You all laugh like fools, and for once, it's not the desperate kind. Your mother spoons him some of the monk's tonic and pats his cheek, whispering nonsense words and pet names you haven't heard since summer. Your sister offers him a carved rabbit from the wooden figure pile, and for a second, he smiles. That smile alone is enough to thaw half the house. Then comes a knock at the door. You all freeze. No one knocks out here unless it's urgent or bad. You reach for the iron poker beside the hearth and open the door slowly, keeping 1 foot behind it. On the other side is the village tanner's daughter, Clara, wrapped in layers so thick she looks more like a moving haystack than a person. Her eyes are red from crying. "It's Ma," she says. "She won't wake up." You grab your boots and coat without a word. Your mother gives you a look, not questioning, not even worried. just a shared understanding. The sickness isn't done with the village yet. It spared your father for now, but others won't be as lucky. Clara leads you through the snow, her footsteps erratic. She's been walking too long, probably alone, probably since dawn. Her house is smaller than yours, barely a hut with smoke drifting from a crooked chimney. Inside, the air is warm but wrong, too still, too heavy. You find Clara's mother in bed, pale and unmoving. Her lips are dry and her skin is damp with sweat. You touch her forehead, boiling. You check her breath, shallow. You try to wake her, calling her name, shaking her shoulder gently, but nothing. Her body's still here, but her mind's gone off somewhere deep. You think of Brother Marek, of the salve, the tonic, the instructions. You tell Clara to build up the fire and start boiling water. You search their cupboard, not much. A few dried herbs, old bread, a cracked bowl of turnips that smells like sour regret, but no medicine. You send your brother, who'd followed without being asked, running back to your cottage. Get the monk's salve, you say, and bring hot stones wrapped in cloth, as many as you can carry. He nods and vanishes into the snow. Clara watches you with glassy eyes. She's trying not to hope. Smart girl. Your brother returns quickly, red-faced and panting, and you begin working as best you can. You rub the salve into the woman's chest. You tuck the hot stones near her legs and arms. You place a damp cloth on her forehead and prop her slightly upright to help her breathe. Then you wait. And wait. She doesn't wake. You tell Clara to keep the fire high, change the cloth often, and rotate her mother every few hours. You promise to return with the monk, even though you're not sure if he'll come twice, but you have to try. On the walk back, you notice how the snow has shifted again. It's finer now, more like dust than flakes. The wind carries it in whispers, brushing across your cheeks like a hand testing your temperature. The sky overhead is flat and white. You feel like you're walking inside a snow globe, one that someone keeps shaking. Back home, your mother meets you at the door. She's worse. You nod. I'll go. You stop her. No, let me. The monk will remember my face. You walk alone to the monastery this time, the bundle in your arms light but precious. One of the family's last beeswax candles, your only remaining clove of garlic, and a small cross carved by your father when your sister was born. You don't know what else to bring, so you bring symbols, hope in physical form. When you arrive, the monk at the door recognizes you and opens without asking. You explain everything in one breath. Brother Marek listens, brow furrowed, then sighs. 2 in 1 week, he mutters, and the river's still rising. He pauses. I'll come. He gives you more salve, another tonic, and a small bundle of what he calls breathweed. It's meant to be steeped in hot water, the steam inhaled through a cloth. She'll either sweat the fever or slip away quieter, he says. You nod, swallowing hard. On the walk back, he tells you about last winter. A family lost all 5 children in 1 week. He doesn't say it as a warning, just a fact, something recorded in the margins of time, like a footnote too cruel to erase. You bring him to Clara's hut. She's still there, face flushed, eyes hollow, you, holding her mother's hand. Marek goes straight to work. You stand outside watching the snow fall. You don't want to hear another person die today. You want the air to be too clean for that. Here's your quirky historical angle to close on. In some medieval cultures, steam therapy wasn't just a medical trick. It was ritual. People believed illness could be drawn out by heat and steam, carried upward like a spirit in the smoke. They boiled herbs, chanted prayers, waved their hands through the mist like they were coaxing the soul back into the body. Inside, you smell the breathweed starting to boil. You hope that whatever spirit is watching is the merciful kind. Back at the cottage, the fire has eaten half the remaining woodpile, and the air inside is thick with the scent of simmering root stew and old socks left too close to the hearth. Your mother's taken to pacing, not out of nerves but out of sheer habit. Something to do with her legs, something to chase away the chill creeping in from the floorboards. Your father's still asleep, which is now considered the best-case scenario. He stirs occasionally, mutters nonsense, then sinks back into his blankets. You check on him every few minutes, not because anything's changed, but because it feels like you're supposed to. There's a new weight in the room now, not from sickness, from truth. You know this isn't sustainable. The food is almost gone. The wood's barely a few days' worth, maybe less if the temperature keeps dropping. And no one's trading anymore. No one has anything to trade. The last time you went to the village square, you saw a grown man offering a pair of children's shoes for a single egg. The cobbler's wife turned him down and cried all the way back to her hut. People don't barter now, they beg. This morning your brother announces he's going to the castle. You blink. What castle? The Lord's manor, he replies, like it's obvious. They've got stores, they're warm, they're eating. He says it in a tone that suggests this is somehow a rational, not insane idea. Your mother stares at him silent for a moment. They'll turn you away. Or worse. He shrugs. Then they'll have to do it to my face. It's hard to argue with his logic. Even harder to argue when you remember the smell wafting from the manor kitchen the last time you passed. Roast meat, butter, herbs. It smelled like summer had been bottled and reheated. You go with him because if one of you is going to be thrown into a ditch by a soldier, you'd rather be there for it. The walk to the manor is brisk, too cold for conversation. The wind bites at your cheeks, and your ears go numb before you even reach the slope. The road is slushy today, a slush that hides frozen patches like traps. You nearly fall twice, each time catching yourself on a low branch or your brother's shoulder. The manor walls rise up like cliffs, their stone dark against the snow. Smoke curls lazily from the chimneys. You can smell meat again. Meat and something baked. Apples. Maybe it's just a dream your stomach is projecting, but it smells real. You reach the gate and call up to the watchman. He peers over the edge of the wall, eyebrows raised like he's watching squirrels try to recite poetry. We're here for food, your brother says plainly. The watchman laughs, actually laughs. So's the rest of the world. Then let us in and throw us out with them, monsieur, your brother replies, chin high. The man stares for a beat too long, then disappears from view. You assume that's the end of it. But the gate creaks open, not all the way, just enough for one person to slip through. Just him, the guard says, nodding to your brother. He glances at you. You start to argue, but he shakes his head. Wait here. And then he's inside. The gate shuts. You wait. Minutes pass, then half an hour. You pace. Your toes go numb. You debate knocking again. Then the gate opens. Your brother steps out, his eyes wide and his face pale. Not from cold, but from whatever happened in there. He's holding a bundle. Bread. Salted meat. A scrap of something red that smells like apples. You stare. Is this a joke? You ask. No, he says, voice quiet. It's charity. You both know better. Lords don't give, they take. And when they do give, it's never clean. He walks quickly, doesn't speak until the manor's far behind you. Finally, he says, They made me kneel. You nod slowly. They laughed, he adds. You don't respond. But they gave me this, he says, lifting the bundle slightly, and said not to come back. Back home, your mother takes the food wordlessly and divides it with surgical precision. Everyone eats, no one speaks. Your father wakes long enough to chew a few bites, then sinks back into his blankets. You chew your piece slowly. Hard bread, salty meat, and a bite of baked apple that makes you want to cry from the sweetness. It's more than you've eaten in days, but it tastes like shame. Your sister asks why your brother's so quiet. Your mother tells her to eat. Later that night, you and your brother sit by the fire. He's sharpening the old hatchet, not because it's useful, but because he needs to do something. The sound of stone against steel fills the room. I'd do it again, he says. You nod. I know. Then he adds, but not for free next time. You look at him. He doesn't look back. Here's your ugly historical truth for tonight. Nobles did sometimes hand out food during harsh winters, but not out of kindness. It was politics, control. A full belly quiets a hungry mob. Bread bought peace, and pity was cheaper than rebellion. So yes, they gave, but only to remind you they could. You sit by the fire until it dies down to a soft orange glow. The house is warmer now, your stomach full for once, but you can't stop thinking about what your brother left behind in that manor. Pride probably, dignity definitely, and something colder than snow. The thaw comes like a betrayal, not gentle, not gradual, not the poetic easing of winter's grip you've imagined during countless cold nights. It arrives fast and messy, with wind that howls through the village like a drunken messenger and skies that dump rain instead of snow. You wake to the sound of water dripping from the roof, a noise that should be comforting but isn't. Not when you realise the roof is dripping inside, not when you glance up and see a slow trickle crawling down the wall, soaking the edge of your sleeping mat and forming a sullen puddle under your father's bed. Outside, the snow has started to melt in the great slushy waves, the kind that don't gently disappear but collapse. Icicles fall from eaves with violent cracks. Roofs shed their frozen loads all at once, like animals shaking off fur. And the ground? The ground is a swamp. The packed dirt path in front of your home is now a sticking, squelching mud pit. Every footstep feels like it might pull your boot clean off. Your father is worse today. The tonic's long gone, and the salve dried up 2 days ago. He doesn't complain, he's past complaining. His cough has returned, weaker but persistent, like a tiny hammer tapping behind his ribs. He drinks water and broth when offered, but swallows like his throat is made of sandpaper. Your mother is at his side constantly now, wiping his forehead, turning him carefully, whispering quiet things you're not supposed to hear. Meanwhile, the cottage begins to fall apart. The thaw has loosened everything. The walls groan. The mud-packed chinks between boards start to weep water. Your younger sister's sleeping corner is now unlivable, soaked through and crawling with a slow creeping mould that smells like rot and old laundry. You try to clear it out, dragging straw and bedding outside to dry, but there's no sun, just rain. Cold, miserable rain that turns the village into a soup of brown and grey. The goat pen floods first, then the woodpile. By noon your yard is a miniature lake, and every board you step on groans like it's considering a final dramatic exit from existence. Your brother tries to rig a trench, digging with a broken bowl, channeling water away from the door. It helps, briefly, then the rain gets worse. That night you move the animals into the house. You never thought it would come to this. Your mother always swore that livestock didn't belong under the same roof as people. Bad for health, bad for pride, bad for sleep. But now the goat and the cow stand just inside the door, damp and miserable and steaming slightly from their own body heat. It does make the room warmer. It also makes it smell like barn socks and wet fur. But no one complains. Except the baby, who seems to think the goat snoring is a personal insult. Here's your fun fringe fact of the day. In many parts of medieval Europe, it was common during the worst months of winter, or the first days of thaw, for peasants to bring animals into the house. Not for convenience, but for warmth. Their body heat helped raise the room temperature, sometimes by several degrees, a living furnace, snorting and chewing and occasionally trying to eat your bedding. By morning, the water is rising. The river that curves behind the village, usually frozen stiff this time of year, is now a roaring black stream, thick with broken ice and mud. You can hear it from your cottage, the low growling hiss of it surging past like it's angry to have been trapped for so long. The banks are disappearing. Trees lean precariously over the edge, and already rumours spread. The bridge upstream has washed out. One cottage on the north side is gone. Your family gathers what you can. Anything high enough to stay dry gets moved. The firewood, what's left of it, is stacked on the table. Blankets are strung across the ceiling to try and divert drips. Your brother nails boards over the worst parts of the wall, more to feel useful than because it'll help. By midday, someone pounds on the door. It's Aldrich, the miller's son. He's drenched, gasping, covered in wet straw and clutching a sack to his chest. "It's coming through the west field," he shouts, even though he's inside now. "Water's knee-high at the church already. We've got maybe an hour." He doesn't wait for thanks or questions, just runs on to the next house. You look at your mother. She's already gathering what she can. The important things, food, tools, the small bundle of waxed herbs the monk gave you. The carved figures your sister refuses to leave behind. And your father. You don't even ask whether he can be moved. You just make it happen. The sled is dragged from the corner, patched quickly with rags and rope. He's bundled in every dry blanket left in the house, tucked tight as if the cold might steal him the moment you stop looking. Your brother and you take the ropes, your mother behind you with your sister and the animals. You step into the flooded yard and nearly slip on the mud. The water is freezing, creeping into your boots and up your legs with every step. You drag the sled slowly, grunting against the weight and the suction of the earth. The rain keeps falling. The village square is chaos. People hauling sacks and carts and animals, children crying, a goat bleating as it's lifted into a cart. The chapel doors are open, and people are filing inside, some shouting orders, others just looking lost. You pull your father to the steps and hoist him up with help. Inside, the floor is already wet. Someone has laid straw to soak it up. The altar has been cleared, replaced with piles of blankets and crates. A few monks are moving among the people, checking pulses, muttering prayers. Brother Marek isn't here. No one knows where he went. You settle your father near the back wall. He doesn't speak, but his hand finds yours, squeezes once. The flood is still rising. You don't go back for the cottage. You know what it looks like. You saw the water creeping under the floorboards. It's only a matter of time. You try not to think about what's still inside. Your sleeping mat, the last jar of pickled cabbage, your father's shoes, the things that can't come with you. Instead, you sit on the cold chapel floor, soaked to the waist, holding a cup of weak ale someone passed out. You sip it like it's soup. You watch the rain slide down the stained glass windows. Here's a debated bit of historical drama. Some scholars believe that the deadliest time of winter wasn't the coldest part, but the thaw. When diseases spread through wet conditions, when weakened buildings collapsed under waterlogged weight, when flooded fields destroyed spring crops before they had a chance to grow. The cold kills quickly. The thaw kills slowly. As night falls, the wind dies down, but the chapel stays full of whispers. Your brother sleeps beside your sister, his arm around her like a fence. Your mother sits with your father, combing his hair with her fingers. The river's still rising. And outside, the village washes away one slosh at a time. You don't sleep much that night. No one really does. The church is packed wall to wall, people, blankets, animals, the odd chicken that flutters and walks indignantly every time someone shifts their weight. The smell is exactly what you'd expect from 50 damp villagers packed into a stone building with no real ventilation. It's smoke, wet wool, and something underneath it all that smells like sour feet and silent despair. You lie on the floor with your head against a rolled cloak, staring up at the vaulted ceiling. The stained glass above the altar casts eerie swirls of blue and red across the floor, distorted by the flicker of torchlight. Every now and then you hear someone whispering a prayer or sobbing softly. One old man near the nave keeps muttering about saints and rats in the same breath, which is only slightly less comforting than the wolf howls you still hear in your dreams. And then you hear that sound, not in your head, not from memory, from outside, a sharp crack like wood splitting, then another, then voices, raised and panicked. You're on your feet before your brain catches up. Someone bursts through the front doors of the chapel, soaked, eyes wide. "They're here!" he shouts. "The western huts, and someone's raiding them." Your first thought is wolves. But wolves don't take sacks of grain or knock down fences with torches. These are people. Your brother's already up, hand on the poker he brought from the house. He gives you that look again, the one that says, "I'd rather die with you than cower without you." The priest tries to calm the room, raising his arms. "Stay here. Stay calm. Let the guards handle it." What guards? The village had maybe 3 men with blades, and one of them's probably drunk and the other 2 are over 60. Your mother pulls your sister close and whispers something into her ear. Then she looks at you. "Don't be stupid," she says. You nod. Then do something stupid anyway. You and your brother step outside. The air hits you like a slap, sharp, wet, and vibrating with tension. You move toward the western edge of the village where the huts line the river. Smoke is already rising from one roof. You hear a scream cut off too quickly. You duck behind a cart and scan the shadows. Then you see them. 3 figures in dark cloaks, faces half covered. One has a torch, another has a bow slung across his back. The third drags a sack that rattles with what sounds like cookware. They're not moving fast, they're not afraid, they know the village is tired, hungry, scattered, easy prey. Your brother picks up a rock, hefts it, then hurls it with surprising force, and it hits the man with the torch square in the back of the head. He drops instantly, like a sack of potatoes. The other 2 spin around, confused. You sprint, straight at them. This is where the history books never quite get it right. They talk about heroism and valour, but in real life, it's clumsy, desperate. You trip. Your brother yells something unintelligible and slams the bowman with the iron poker. The sack thief swings his arm and clocks you across the face with a tin pot. You hit the ground hard, the taste of blood instantly blooming on your tongue. By the time you scramble to your feet again, the figures are gone, fled into the night, leaving the sack, the torch, and one unconscious man lying in the mud. He groans. You and your brother look at each other. "Alive," he says, sounding almost disappointed. You bind the man's hands with a rope someone left hanging from a fence post and drag him back toward the church. People emerge to watch, murmuring, eyes widen. Someone claps half-heartedly. You haul him up the steps and drop him just inside the door. "Someone guard him," your brother mutters, wiping his face with his sleeve. He's the reason we don't have spoons anymore. You sit down, legs shaking, and try not to let anyone see your hands tremble. Your face is bruised and your lip is split. Your breath fogs the air in ragged puffs. Your mother pulls you into her arms without a word. Later, the elders decide to keep the man locked in the chapel's cellar. They take turns watching him. You try not to think about whether he'll be left down there until the thaw ends or something worse. Here's a slice of historical grit for the day. During medieval winters, banditry spiked dramatically, not just on the roads, but in the villages themselves. Entire groups of travellers, abandoned soldiers, and displaced peasants would turn to theft to survive. Monasteries and manors were often guarded, but smaller homes and towns? Not so much. Raids became part of the season's risks, like frostbite, starvation, and roofs collapsing under wet snow. The rest of the night passes in a haze of broken sleep and constant checking over your shoulder. You keep expecting more shadows to creep through the dark. You dream of wolves wearing boots, of men whose faces are wrapped like butchered pigs, of your father whispering your name and not waking up. When morning comes, it does so half-heartedly, with fog and a bone-deep chill that seeps in even through the thick chapel walls. But you're still here. Everyone is. Well, almost everyone. Old Marta is gone. She passed in her sleep, the priest says. Peaceful. Her body's wrapped in a blanket now, placed gently in the alcove near the back. No one moves her. There's nowhere else to put her. She'll stay there until the ground thaws enough to bury her. Could be days, could be weeks. No one mentions the raiders again, not out loud. But everyone eyes the door more often now. Everyone sharpens their knives just a little longer. You tend to your father, feed the fire, wrap your bruised ribs, and try to ignore the thudding rhythm that's taken root behind your eyes. Tonight someone else will take the night watch, but your brother stays up anyway, just in case. Morning light cuts through the chapel windows in fractured beams of gold and dust, as if heaven is trying its best to apologise for everything you've been through. You're already awake, have been for hours, your back stiff from the stone floor, your legs sore from huddling up for warmth. The fire is still burning, barely, more smoke than flame now. You take a moment to stare at it and think about how many things in your life have become metaphors for barely surviving. Your mother is spooning broth into your father's mouth. He's conscious again, sort of. His eyes flutter open in short bursts, like he's peeking between two bad dreams. He doesn't speak much, but he's holding her hand with more strength than yesterday, which feels like a minor miracle. Your sister is curled against your brother's side, drooling slightly onto his coat. You'd tease her if things weren't so... this. There's something different about today. You can't name it at first, but you feel it deep in your chest. A pressure, a shift. Then it hits you. It's quiet. Not just hushed, not just respectful for the dead quiet, but dead quiet. The storm has stopped. The rain has paused. The wind, for once, is no longer clawing at the windows like some starving beast. The silence is almost worse. It makes your ears ache. Then you hear it. Bells. Distant, clear, and unmistakable. The church bells are ringing. You sit upright so fast you pull something in your back. Across the room, the priest is already moving toward the bell rope, hauling it with both hands. The sound grows stronger, echoing across the village, through the snow-laden hills, across the swollen river. Few people blink awake and stare. Others begin to stand, confused. You know what this means, and yet, for some reason, it feels unreal. It's Christmas. Today is Christmas. You hadn't realised the date. Not because you forgot it, because it just didn't matter anymore. The days have blurred together in cold and hunger and fear, but the priest remembered. The bells keep ringing, loud and persistent, like they're trying to shake the snow off the heavens. For a moment, no one moves. Then a few people start lighting candles. Someone unpacks a roll of cloth dyed red and gold and drapes it over the altar. The old woman who lost her leg 2 winters ago begins humming a hymn. It's shaky, off-key, but haunting. Others join in, their voices low, raspy from smoke and sickness and sleepless nights. You're pulled into it whether you want to be or not. The whole chapel shifts into something else, still crowded, still cold, still heavy with grief, but filled now with this strange insistence on hope. Your sister is the first to smile, not a big smile, not a party smile, just the small kind, the real kind. The kind you see when a starving dog licks your hand, or when the sun finds a way through the clouds just long enough to warm your skin. The priest begins Mass in Latin, his voice echoing off the stones. You don't understand half of what he says, but you know the rhythm, the cadence. You kneel, you stand, you cross your chest. You feel yourself slipping into something familiar and strange all at once. Your brother hands you a crust of bread, carefully saved. You tear it in half and share it with your sister. It's hard, but it tastes like something holy today. Someone passes you a flask of weak ale. You sip it with reverence, letting the warmth coat your throat and settle in your belly like a small candle. Then the doors open again, just as the service is ending, and in walks a man you've never seen before. Tall, wrapped in a thick fur cloak, with a face half hidden by a frost-covered scarf. Behind him are two mules, dragging sleds stacked with crates, real crates, marked with the crest of the manor. The murmurs start instantly. What is this? More taxes! But the man steps forward, unwrapping the scarf. His face is wind-burned, but not cruel. "I bring winter tithe," he says, loudly enough for all to hear. "From the Lord's table." He opens one of the crates. Bread. Not crusts, not burned ends, loaves. Actual warm loaves of bread. You can smell it from here. You think someone behind you faints. He continues. Barley. Root vegetables, dried meat, coal, oil, linen. He points to the second sled. "And a letter from Lord Ulfric himself." The priest takes it, unrolling the parchment with shaking hands. He writes, "In celebration of the birth of Christ, let no man go hungry in Ulfric's land." The priest pauses. His lip trembles. Then he hands the letter to the elder beside him and turns to the man. "You're serious?" The messenger nods. "The road to the manor is closed for now, so we bring the manor here." It's a strange moment, filled with the kind of tension that only comes when people don't know if they're being blessed or mocked. You half expect it to be a trap, some kind of cruel joke, but the crates stay. The food is passed out. You take your share slowly, barely able to look at it. A whole loaf of bread, a lump of butter wrapped in leaves, an onion. You could cry over this onion. Your sister is already nibbling hers like it's cake. Your brother watches the messenger suspiciously but says nothing. Later you learn the truth, or something like it. The Lord was shamed. After the outcry over the raiders and the starving families, he ordered the tithe released from the manor's storehouses. Not generosity, reputation, strategy. Still, it saves lives. You eat hot stew for the first time in weeks. There's salt in it, there's flavour. People are talking again. Not just whispering, talking, laughing even. The chapel fills with the scent of food, the flicker of candles, and that low warm hum of human beings daring to believe that maybe, just maybe, this won't end in death after all. Here's your offbeat historical detail to chew on. Christmas in the medieval world wasn't a one-day event. It stretched over 12 days of feasting, praying, and, if you were lucky, re-gifting things you'd previously stolen. Lords were often expected to give back during this time, if not out of kindness, then to maintain their social status. It was the one season where the line between noble and peasant blurred slightly, if only for the length of a warm meal. That night, you sleep with bread in your belly and a blanket that doesn't smell like goat. Your father wakes for a moment, eats a spoonful of stew, and smiles. Your mother kisses his forehead. Your sister hums the same hymn from earlier. And for the first time all season, no one keeps watch. Because for one night, the winter doesn't feel like it wants to kill you. It almost feels like it's letting you breathe. You wake with a jolt, and for a terrifying second, you think it's all been a dream. The food, the warmth, the quiet. But then you smell it. The earthy sweetness of onions simmering, the unmistakable thickness of barley and broth, the way the smoke from the hearth now smells like meat fat instead of damp desperation. Your eyes adjust to the morning light, and you see your mother ladling breakfast from a pot while your sister chews on a heel of bread like it's a treasure. She waves at you with her mouth full, and you wave back before realizing your pillow is someone's old cloak and you're still half covered in straw. You sit up slowly, your ribs still ache, your lips are still cracked, and your clothes haven't been dry since December, but you feel okay. Not good, not safe, but okay. The kind of okay that makes you deeply suspicious something bad is about to happen. You glance over at your father. He's sitting upright for once, propped against the chapel wall, with a fur-lined shawl around his shoulders. His eyes are clearer, still sunken, still heavy, but watching. When he notices you looking, he nods once, more of a blink than a movement, and lifts a cup of broth to his lips. Later that morning, you join your brother outside to help carry in more firewood from the monastery's supply. The snow has finally stopped for real, but now it's that dreaded grey-brown slush, which makes every step sound like you're walking through someone's stomach. The roads are nearly impassable, the fields soggy and sunken. You hear talk that the far edge of the village lost 2 houses to the thaw, their supports giving way under the wet ground. One family is now sharing a goat shed with actual goats. On the way back in, someone calls out your name. You turn and see a group near the chapel steps, huddled around the icy edge of the village pond. And then you realise they're not huddling. They're working. With long hooks and wooden sleds, they're cutting into the ice, pulling it away in large crystalline slabs. You watch for a second, confused. Then you see the sleds lined up nearby, each loaded with straw and linen wrapped cubes of frozen water. Of course, it's the ice harvest. Even in this mess, even in this ever-ending grey slop of a wintersen, there are traditions. The ice harvest is one of them. Every year the villagers carve chunks of ice from the pond and store them in root cellars, caves or insulated pits, layered with straw. It seems absurd now. Why would anyone want to save ice when all you've done is suffer under it for 3 months? But come summer, when the sun finally remembers your village exists, those chunks will cool milk, preserve meat, maybe even chill a mug of ale if you're feeling fancy. Your brother nudges you. Want to help? You hesitate, thinking of your father, your mother, your aching legs. Then you shrug. Why not? I've never been good at staying dry anyway. You spend the next few hours helping the crew hack and haul the thick ice slabs. The work is miserable, cold and dangerous. One misstep and your foot could plunge through the weakened crust. The ice saws are blunt from years of use, and every swing feels like sawing through concrete with a butter knife. But you fall into a rhythm. Cut, crack, lift, drag. It's weirdly satisfying, especially since it doesn't involve fighting wolves or begging for bread. You even start to sweat under your layers, which is something you haven't done since November. Steam rises from your sleeves as the sun tries to poke through the clouds. There's laughter now and then, a few curses, and once a game of guess how long until Joss falls in, which ends when Joss, predictably, falls in. Only waist deep, but enough to make everyone laugh like idiots. But not all the stories end with laughter. Around midday, someone drops their pole, and it skitters across the ice, sliding to the far edge. A young boy, maybe 10 or 11, rushes after it, too fast, too eager. You hear someone shout, "Stop!" But the boy's already stepped too far. There's a sudden crack, loud and sharp like a bone snapping. Then silence. Then a splash. Chaos. People drop tools. Some sprint for the bank, others grab poles. You and your brother race toward the hole where the ice gave way. The boy's head bobs once, twice, before vanishing beneath the surface. You hear his mother scream, a sound that punches you right in the gut. For a second, no one moves. Then your brother dives in. You scream his name, but he's already in the water, hacking through slush, grabbing blindly. A second later, he surfaces with the boy's coat. Another pair of hands grabs the child and pulls him up onto the bank. Your brother clambers out behind him, pale and shaking like a leaf, his teeth already chattering. They're alive, but just barely. People wrap the boy in blankets, slap his cheeks, force hot water between his lips. The mother is sobbing now, but she's holding her son. Your brother just sits on the ground, soaked and silent. You kneel beside him and drape your coat over his shoulders. "You're an idiot," you say. He nods, teeth chattering. You would have done the same. Probably, but that doesn't make it less stupid. Here's your chilling fun fact. Ice harvesting wasn't just a survival strategy, it was commerce. In some parts of medieval Europe and beyond, towns would harvest tons of ice to sell or store for the warmer months, but it was dangerous work. Falls through thin ice were common, and stories of people drowning under frozen ponds pop up in folk tales, town records, and cautionary ballads across the centuries. Some were even memorialised with crude wooden crosses on the bank. By the time you return to the chapel, the mood has shifted again. The stew's ready, and someone's managed to scrounge up dried apples for dessert. Your brother sits by the fire, wrapped like a human dumpling, sipping broth and not saying much. The rescued boy is nearby, sleeping soundly in his mother's arms. Your father eats half a bowl of soup, your sister braids straw and sings softly to herself. Your mother looks at you with something like calm behind her eyes. And you? You stare into the fire, still shivering a little. wondering how many more times you'll come this close to disaster before the thaw finally gives way to spring. The ice may be cut and stored, but the cold, it's still out there, waiting, watching, and you're just trying to stay one step ahead. You wake the next morning to a sound you haven't heard in what feels like years. Birds. Just one, maybe two, singing somewhere up in the rafters or outside the broken chapel windows. The notes are tentative, a little ragged, like the bird isn't sure if it's allowed to sing yet. But it's there. You sit up slowly, aching from yesterday's ice hauling and still sore from the bruises that haven't fully faded. But the sound stays, a soft, repeating song. You glance at your brother, still curled up near the hearth, his cheeks flushed pink from near hypothermia and sleep. You don't wake him, you just listen. It's late March now, or at least close to it. No one's exactly sure. The calendar that used to hang in the chapel was soaked during the flood, and no one's had the nerve, or parchment, to make a new one. But the signs are there. The sun lingers just a little longer in the sky each day. The snow has stopped falling. The slush has stopped rising. And that low, pressing weight in the air, the one that made every breath feel like it cost something, that's lighter now. But the food is not. The last of the Lord's tithe is gone. What wasn't eaten was bartered, and what wasn't bartered was spoiled from damp and poor storage. You have exactly one turnip and a clump of dry barley flour left in your family's bundle. Maybe 2 meals, if you really stretch it. Your mother's been sneaking the smallest servings to your father, who's now well enough to sit upright but not to walk. He's thinner than you remember him being. His beard, once thick and wild, now looks like someone glued hay to his jaw. Today is the beginning of what the villagers call the hungermoon, the cruel joke of a time between the end of winter and the true beginning of spring. The frost has retreated, yes. The snow has melted, sure. But the earth? The earth is still sleeping. The ground is too wet to till. The trees haven't budded. The chickens aren't laying and the goat's gone dry. The stores are gone and the new food isn't ready yet. This is when the real danger begins. You help your mother pack a small satchel, 2 jars of broth, the last clove of garlic, and a half-broken wooden spoon. Take it to the commune line, she tells you. See what you can get. You know the line. It's just past the chapel, down the hill near the old granary, where the villagers most desperate gather to pool and exchange what scraps they have. A half potato for a handful of oats, a candle stub for a worn sock, and lately nothing at all. You walk through the thawed streets, mud sucking at your boots, ice chunks still clinging to the shaded corners. Around you, the buildings look like they've aged decades in a single season. Walls bowed from water, roofs collapsed in spots, everything reeking of mould and cold ashes. Someone waves from a doorway, and you nod back. Even now, the village tries to pretend it's still a community. At the line, things are worse than expected. The people here are gaunt, the kind of thin that changes how someone stands. There's no bartering happening now, just people staring at each other, hoping someone else has something to offer. One old man unwraps a blanket to reveal a bone, just a bone. From a pig or a deer no one knows. He offers it in exchange for anything warm. You leave without trading. There's nothing there for you, nothing left for anyone. You walk the long way back, past the old fields, now soggy and grey. The kind of ground that swallows your feet and refuses to let go. And then you spot something strange. Movement near the tree line. You crouch low behind a fallen cart and squint. A figure. No, 2, moving slow, covered in cloaks, carrying something between them. You don't call out, you wait, you watch. They reach a small outbuilding, half collapsed but still standing, and disappear inside. You creep closer, not out of suspicion, out of desperation. Maybe they have food, maybe they've caught something, maybe they're from another village and have news of roads opening, trade routes clearing. But when you peek through this broken wall, you freeze. It's not food, it's a body. A young man, maybe 20, wrapped in linen, face pale, eyes closed. The 2 cloaked figures, his parents you assume, are placing him gently on a stack of straw. They're whispering prayers. One of them reaches into a pouch and sprinkles something, dried herbs maybe, over his face. Then they kneel and begin to dig, with spoons. The ground is still too hard for shovels. You back away slowly, breath shallow. Not because you're afraid, because this is normal now. Later at the chapel, your brother asks you what you saw. You tell him. He nods, solemn. I saw 3 people fighting over a dead rat yesterday. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. They weren't even from here. It's not even shocking anymore. Here's your bleak but true historical footnote for the day. In the medieval world, the weeks between late winter and early spring were often the deadliest. Not from cold, but from starvation. The food ran out. The game was scarce. The earth hadn't bloomed yet. In some regions, they called this period the famine weeks, and if your village didn't store well, or the winter lasted too long, you'd bury more people in March than in January. That night your mother makes a stew from the turnip, a spoon of barley, and some dried greens she saved from last fall. You eat slowly, chewing each bite until it feels like a meal. Your sister falls asleep mid-bowl, curled up like a kitten. Your father whispers something to your mother. You can't hear what, but her shoulders sag and she kisses his forehead. The chapel creaks in the wind. You lie awake for a long time staring at the ceiling, listening to your stomach argue with itself. You've made it through the worst of the cold. Now you just have to survive the waiting. You don't even notice the warmth at first. Not because it isn't there, but because it comes so slowly, so slyly, that your body doesn't quite believe it. It starts with your fingers, just a little more flexible than they were last week. Then your toes, no longer curled in permanent defence. Then the air itself, no longer sharp enough to make your teeth ache when you breathe through your mouth. You wake up one morning and realise the breath rising from your lips doesn't fog in front of your face anymore. You step outside and the ground doesn't crunch. It squishes. There's still ice in the corners, of course, pale and stubborn like the last few regrets of winter. But even that's melting into puddles, the kind that shine when the sun finally decides to show its face. It's low in the sky, weak and watery, but it's real. And you feel it on your skin for the first time in what feels like centuries. You want to cry, but you don't. You just stand there, letting the sun soak into your sleeves, blinking, like a mole seeing daylight for the first time. Inside the chapel, people are stirring more than usual. There's an undercurrent of movement, not just the restless kind, but something with purpose. Buckets being rinsed, blankets being packed, tools emerging from the piles they were buried under for months. Even the animals seem to sense the shift. The cow is mooing more loudly, the goat has stopped looking suicidal, and someone says the chickens actually laid 2 whole eggs this morning. You hear the priest murmur to one of the elders, "It's time." Time for what? You find out just after midday when the doors open and the village elder himself, old Thomas, who lost 3 toes last winter and is still more spry than a man half his age, climbs onto a stool and shouts over the chapel murmur, "We're going home." You don't breathe for a second. Home. It's a strange word now. You're not even sure what it means anymore. A building, a hearth, a roof with holes. What's left of your house is probably half collapsed, full of mud and moss and regret. But even so, it's yours. And the thought of it not being a smoking ruin, of being able to sit in your own corner, stretch your legs, cook your food over your own fire, that's worth everything. People begin packing, rolling up mats, gathering pots, folding what little fabric survived the floods. Some leave candles as thanks on the altar. Others just nod toward the crucifix and shuffle out. It's not a parade, there are no cheers, just a slow, determined migration back into the unknown. You help your mother with the sled. Your father is wrapped tightly, his eyes open, alert. He doesn't speak much, but he watches everything as you move. Your brother hoists the last of the blankets onto his shoulders and nods toward the door. Outside, the world looks raw, open, vulnerable. Like someone peeled the skin off the village and left it to heal in the breeze. Roofs have caved in, fences are leaning or missing. The paths are more puddle than dirt, and every house bears the same weary expression. What now? You round the corner and see your cottage. You stop. It's still standing, sort of. The roof has sunk a bit on one side, and the door's off its hinges, half buried in a pile of wet straw. The walls are covered in mud spatters and streaks of moss, but the bones of it, stone, wood, and memory, are there. You exhale, step forward, and push the door open fully. It smells like mould, and goat, and old ashes. But it's home. You start cleaning without talking. Everyone does. Your sister clears out the old bedding, your mother scrapes the walls with a flat certificate stick, your brother hammers the door back into place. Your father sits in the doorway on a stool wrapped in blankets, watching with glassy eyes. You sweep the floor with a broom that lost half its bristles in January, and pretend it's working. By nightfall you've made a dent. The hearth is scraped clean, the table is upright. The sleeping corner has been relocated away from the dampest wall. A single candle burns on the ledge, and you sit around it, sipping thin broth and chewing bits of stale bread someone bartered from the miller's son. It's not cosy, not yet, but it's real. Your sister draws a picture on the wall with charcoal, a sun, a goat, a stick figure holding a flower. You're not sure if it's symbolic or just delirium, but it makes you smile. And then outside you hear it. The sound of hooves, not the plodding step of an ox cart. Galloping. You and your brother exchange a look and grab the nearest tools, just in case. The rider comes into view fast, cutting across the village path on a dark horse, hood down, cloak flying. Is one of the Lord's messengers. He reins in sharply near the chapel, calls out something, then rides on. You only catch a few words. Tax collector, 2 days. The entire family groans. It takes exactly 10 seconds for the mood to deflate. You'd almost forgotten. The Lord giveth during Christmas, and the Lord taketh whenever he damn well pleases. Here's your final historical gut punch. Yes, lords and nobles often distributed food during winter out of obligation or guilt. But once spring came, the taxes returned. Rent, grain quotas, livestock tallies. If you couldn't pay, your tools were seized, or your land, or worse, there are records of entire villages being restructured because too many peasants died and the survivors couldn't meet the quotas. Your mother mutters something unholy under her breath. Your brother throws a rock at a tree. You sit quietly and watch the candle flicker. Tomorrow you'll figure something out, and tonight you're home. And for now, that is enough.